When it comes to games that blew up into massive media empires, there are a few that instantly come to mind. Things like Pokemon, Mario, Zelda, and of course, Sonic. This speedy blue hedgehog has had quite the legacy, and with the sheer number of games, comics, TV, and film adaptations, it is easy to see just how widespread of a series Sonic has become. However, with a franchise this size, Sonic has developed a pretty extensive cast of characters, all with their own lore and backstories, and that can be pretty hard to keep track of. So today, we're going to be taking a look at each and every one of them as we run through Sonic's history, going game by game and talking about when these characters were introduced, who they are, and what makes them special. And just as a disclaimer, there's a lot of Sonic media out there, but because we are only really focusing on the characters themselves, I'll only be covering the games that actually expanded the roster by introducing a character for the first time. And speaking of expanding the cast, you can do that yourself by subscribing to Uproar Media, leaving a like on this video, and letting us know who your favorite Sonic character is in the comments. You can even suggest future video ideas if you want us to talk about anything in particular. Now, with that all out of the way, let's go back all the way to the early 90s for our first two Sonic characters, who are of course Sonic the Hedgehog and Dr. Eggman. Back then, Sonic was a regular talking hedgehog and Eggman was a regular scientist named Dr. Ovi Kintobor that had just found his way to the Emerald Hill Zone on Mobius. The Doctor came across 6 Chaos Emeralds one day and used them to develop the Retro-Orbital Chaos Compressor, a machine to get rid of all the evil energy on Mobius by storing it within the emeralds. At some point, while developing the machine, a very speedy hedgehog came along to make friends with Kintobor. The Doctor was amazed by Sonic's speed and invented the power sneakers to protect his feet while running, as well as the kinetic gyroscope to test out his new kicks. While Sonic ran on this glorified hamster wheel, he was able to break the sound barrier and overpowered the machine. The gyroscope exploded, fusing Sonic's quills together and changing their color to a radiant shade of cobalt blue. Kintobor's research on the Retro-Orbital Chaos Compressor proved to be incomplete, as he was lacking a 7th emerald, and so Sonic began helping him look for it. Back in the lab, Kintobor declutters his fridge and falls onto the ROCC, I am not saying that whole name every time, while holding a rotten egg and smashing it onto the dashboard. The ROCC released the power of the emeralds onto Kintobor, and ultimately he is turned into the evil Dr. Ivo Robotnik, who goes on to become Sonic's mortal enemy. Now, this is a story that we only really get to see in the comics and technically isn't canon to the games, but it does give us some fun backstory for Sonic and Eggman, and I did want to include it anyways since not a lot is actually known about Sonic and Robotnik's canonical backstories in the games. But with that, let's begin with Sonic the Hedgehog. This game came out in 1991 and sees Sonic on his first ever quest to defeat Dr. Eggman in a 2D side-scrolling platformer. Eggman is using the Badnik robots powered by animals on South Island to try and obtain the Chaos Emeralds, and the player controls Sonic to put a stop to him. In this game, Sonic uses his speed and iconic spin attack to save the animals and collect the Chaos Emeralds before he faces off with Eggman, who is piloting the Eggmobile along the way. Sonic doesn't actually have a ton of backstory that we get to know about here, so I'm just going to give you updates on Sonic game by game, letting you know what he's getting up to in the plot and if any cool new powers happen along the way. So for now, let's go more into depth on Robotnik. Now, I know that Eggman might look goofy, but he's actually a really intelligent scientist with an IQ of 300, and his experiments are nothing to be laughed at. In the final battle of this game, Eggman uses the Egg Crusher, a piston-like device that he uses to try and crush Sonic, but he's got countless other inventions and machines up his sleeve as well. His glasses can track down Chaos Emeralds and repel hypnosis, his jacket is full of hidden devices like jetpacks and holoscreens, and he's an excellent pilot. He displays amazing control over virtually any vehicle he drives, like the Egg Walker, the Egg Typhoon, the E-Rider, or even the Egg Fleet. Eggman doesn't just make cars and ships though, he is also responsible for space stations like the Death Egg, transforming living things into cyborgs and robots, powerful weapons like the Final Egg Blaster and the Chaos Energy Cannon, the E-Series of robots, and most notably, Metal Sonic. He's also just like crazy strong. I mean, a hit from him can blow away a car or shatter a block of ice. Plus, he can transform into Nightmare Eggman using Reverie, which allows him to fly, teleport, and change sizes, grow more body parts, and multiply himself while working as a hive mind. Robotnik himself is self-centered and egotistical, see what I did there? And is the grandson of Professor Gerald Robotnik, and dreams of following in his grandfather's deeply inspiring scientific footsteps. He yearns for world domination and seeks the power of the Chaos Emeralds to make that happen. However, Sonic foils his plans at the end of the first game, but that doesn't keep him down for long. And soon he's back with his shenanigans in the Sonic CD, which was released just a few years later in 1993. While Sonic CD comes out after Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it does technically take place before it. This game takes place on the elusive Little Planet, a place that only appears once a year at Never Lake. This time, Eggman is not after the Chaos Emeralds, but instead is looking for the Time Stones to grant him power to travel time and rule Little Planet. To do this, Eggman infiltrates Little Planet's past with robot transporters and Metal Sonic's holograms to secure control of it in the future. And Sonic has to make use of rifts in time to stop him. And that brings us to our first new character, Metal Sonic, who, as I mentioned before, is one of Robotnik's inventions. This is a robotic clone of Sonic that was meant to replicate his speed and power to take down the real Sonic once and for all. Metal Sonic has no sense of mercy and will stop at nothing if it means he can take Sonic out, even if it means disobeying Robotnik's orders. Now, even though he's a robot, Metal Sonic is sentient. He is calculating and violent, and is fueled only by his mission to destroy his living counterpart. Metal Sonic was made in the image of the hedgehog he was born to hate, and replicates all of his powers. They're a pretty even match for each other, and yet Sonic always manages to beat him. Speaking of his powers though, jet fast speed and spin attacks are just the beginning with this guy. Metal Sonic is incredibly durable, and is able to surpass Sonic in speed temporarily by overriding his circuits and going into overdrive. He has plasma pulse lasers, extendable limbs, razor-sharp claws, a titanium frame that is incredibly strong, and he can even produce a very durable black shield. But it doesn't stop there. Metal Sonic can also copy the abilities of others by scanning them, and can even shapeshift, giving himself essentially endless possibilities for battle. On top of that, he has a built-in Chaos Emerald scanner and is even able to make use of the Chaos Emeralds to power himself up and boost his strength and speed like Sonic can. In fact, Metal Sonic is capable of many power-ups and transformations. In Knuckles' Chaotix, when he comes into contact with the Dark Ring, Metal Sonic transforms into Metal Sonic Kai, a large, red flying robot tasked with taking down Knuckles. In Sonic Heroes, Metal Sonic takes the form of the lightning-shooting Neo Metal Sonic, the flame-throwing, missile-launching Metal Madness, and the ultra-strong airborne Metal Overlord. In Sonic Mania, we see him turn into Giga Metal with the help of the Phantom Ruby, which lets him use time bombs and lasers. There's also Super Neo Metal Sonic and the Draconic Master Overlord, powered by the Master Emerald in the IDW Comics. Sonic CD also introduces us to Amy Rose. Amy is a pink hedgehog that is in love with Sonic. She is very intrigued by tarot and fortune-telling and things like that. In fact, her first appearance is brought on by a tarot card reading that tells her that she will have a fateful meeting with Sonic on Little Planet. And so she ultimately goes on a journey to meet him there. When Amy gets kidnapped by Eggman and Metal Sonic later in the game, Sonic rescues her and she proceeds to join him on a bunch of future adventures. Amy is very kind and cares about others, especially others in need. In Sonic Adventures, she goes on a quest to help a little bird get home to its family, and in Sonic Adventures 2, she shows a lot of bravery as she asks Shadow for help, and then helps him remember the parting words of an old friend, appealing to his humanity. Later in Sonic Heroes, Amy even creates Team Rose to search for her missing friends, and a resistance group in Sonic Forces in the fight against Eggman. Jumping forward to Sonic Frontiers, Amy finds herself stuck on Kronos Island in between dimensions until Sonic can come to her rescue again, and the two go off to explore and learn about the Ancients together. Amy's main power comes from her Pico Pico hammer. She uses it to crack heavy blows with powerful shockwaves onto her opponents, but her hammer can also launch herself and her allies into the air. She can swing it around like a spinning top, and it can even help her take flight if she swings it fast enough and generates tornadoes. Her Storming Heart and Psyhammer attacks are nothing to be scoffed at either, though. And while she may end up getting kidnapped here and there, Amy isn't exactly a damsel in distress. She wears weights around her arms to keep her strong, and practices martial arts like kickboxing and can even use spin attacks like Sonic. She's also capable of double jumps and high jumps, especially when using her mystical cards. Her tarot cards even let her float to track things down, and can provide some much needed advice occasionally. Finally, she can even make use of the Chaos Emeralds to enter Hyper Mode, can transform into Super Amy, can transform into Hyper Amy using the Super Emeralds, and can make use of color powers thanks to the Wisps. But that is all for Amy, so let's move forward in the story and back in time to 1992 with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. In Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic takes off for West Side Island with Eggman unknowingly in tow, both of them chasing after the Chaos Emeralds that are supposed to be sealed away there. Along the way, Sonic meets Miles Prower, more commonly known as Tails, and the two of them team up against Eggman to stop him from using the emeralds on his Death Egg space station. This game ultimately leads to a showdown on the Death Egg between Sonic and Mecha Sonic, our second new character of the game, and the space station winds up plummeting to Earth as it explodes, and the game either ends with Tails saving Sonic from the station, or with Sonic landing on Earth as the powered-up Super Sonic with all of the emeralds. Speaking of which, in this game, Sonic gains his iconic Spin Dash. Now, like I said, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 brought us two new characters, Tails and Mecha Sonic. Tails was born on West Side Island where he met Sonic, and his nickname, as you might have guessed, comes from the fact that he has two tails that he can use to spin and fly, glide, or sail through the air. He and Sonic become fast friends, haha, and Tails ends up really looking up to and admiring Sonic. He is a loyal friend and a very skilled mechanic, his intelligence and creativity making him an excellent engineer, physician, and scientist, and he can create and understand virtually any piece of technology if he sets his mind to it. Tails is responsible for the tornado planes, the emerald detector, the Miles Electric, several vessels capable of dimension hopping, and even a fake Chaos Emerald that they used to trick Eggman at one point. Tails also created the Cyclone Mech, a vehicle that can transform from a car to a walking robot to a missile-launching plane, but that's not where his vehicular prowess ends. He also made a few race cars like the MTP-01 Whirlwind and the MTP-02 Whirlwind S7. On top of that, he can use powers like the Chaos Emeralds, the Spin Attacks, and several of the devices that he made in battle, like the Magic and Big Hands, cannons, his helmet, bombs, even just a straight-up wrench, among other things, of course. However, of these, my personal favorite is the wrench. It's just funny to see this little guy swinging it around. Switching gears to a character with, well, gears, we have Mecha Sonic, who is definitely trying to fill in Metal Sonic's titanium shoes, but doesn't really get the job done, seeing as Metal Sonic comes back way more often than Mecha does. This is yet another of Eggman's Sonic effigies to show off just how deeply he wants to harness the Hedgehog's strength, but obviously Sonic pretty often kicks Mecha's butt as well. Mecha Sonic is able to replicate Sonic's spin attacks, and his quills protect him from anything behind him. He uses rocket boosters to help him fly and gain speed, and can send off flying spiky projectiles while airborne or while using his spin attack. He later gets upgraded into Mecha Sonic Mark II, which has enhanced skill sets and powers, and harbors a mental link with Sonic. Now, after Sonic CD and Sonic the Hedgehog 2, in 1993 we get SegaSonic The Hedgehog. Sonic winds up trapped on Eggman Island in this game, where he meets Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel, and the trio work together to get off of the island in this 3-player isometric arcade game. Mighty the Armadillo is a pacifist by nature. He hates violence, but that doesn't mean he isn't really strong and ready to fight when it counts. He likes seeing new places and really cares about his friends, even enough to trade a Chaos Emerald for their safety. Mighty's strength and speed are on par with Sonic, and his armadillo shell is an equally strong defense, helping him smash through walls and even protecting him from attacks by Metal Sonic. And like many others, he can use the Chaos Emeralds and spin attacks. As for Ray the Flying Squirrel, he's a little bit more carefree than Mighty, and prefers not to question when good things happen to him, but instead just enjoy whatever luck comes his way. He's a little bit scatterbrained, but his quick wits and resourcefulness make him a great ally to have around. He's able to keep up with Mighty speed-wise, and can use Chaos Emeralds, spin attacks, and can even fly. Now, coming back from the arcade scene in 1994, we have Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which picks up where Sonic the Hedgehog 2 left off. Eggman's Death Egg is on track to smash into Angel Island, the home of Knuckles the Echidna, who is the guardian of the Master Emerald. The Death Egg does end up crash landing, and Angel Island falls from the sky, only managing to stay above water thanks to the power of the Master Emerald. Eggman, with a now busted Death Egg, figures that he could get it up and running again with the Emerald, and quickly gets to work turning animals into badniks again. He also manages to fool Knuckles into thinking that Sonic stole the Chaos Emeralds. Meanwhile, Sonic and Tails head for Angel Island following a signal on Tails' emerald detector, and when they get there, Sonic and Knuckles fight, and Knuckles takes the emeralds. Eggman eventually gets the Death Egg up and running again, and as it takes off, Sonic arrives to stop him. The fight sends the Death Egg hurling back towards Angel Island again, where it crashes into Lava Reef. Soon after, Sonic spots Knuckles leaving a hidden room and checks it out once the coast is clear, and inside the room he finds a Super Ring, a ring with the power to turn the Chaos Emeralds into Super Emeralds and grant Sonic hyper powers. At least it would if he had any of the emeralds. Later, Sonic and Knuckles end up on the same team when they see Eggman trying to steal the Master Emerald, and Sonic has to fight Mecha Sonic Mark II before boarding the Death Egg once again to take down Robotnik and his final weapon. He manages to bring the Master Emerald back to Angel Island, allowing it to return to the sky, and Knuckles manages to stop Mecha Sonic Mark II from stealing the Master Emerald once again. Finally, in the game's true ending, he and Sonic restored the Master Emerald for the second time. In these games, Sonic gains an Insta-Shield, and with the new shield items added to the game, he can trade that out for an Aqua Shield, which lets him breathe underwater, as well as granting him the Bound Jump, the Fire Shield, which gives him a Fireball Spin Dash, and the Thunder Shield, which gives him a Double Jump. Now, after all of that, who is Knuckles? Well, Knuckles the Echidna is a descendant from the Knuckles clan, and one of the last known of his kind. 3,000 years ago, the Knuckles clan lived in the now mystic ruins until they waged war with the Chaos and were mostly wiped out, but we'll talk about that later. For now, let's get back to Knuckles. Brought up basically alone on Angel Island, Knuckles lives and breathes his role as the guardian of the Master Emerald. In fact, after the events of the games, Knuckles stays on Angel Island and pretty much only joins up with Sonic and his friends when something big is going on. Despite that, he is still very loyal, he is very strong, and tends to keep to himself. He likes training and treasure hunting, but he hasn't had much socialization in his life, and as a result, he doesn't always get along with others as he's pretty brash and honest, as well as being a bit naive at times. Knuckles eventually goes on to lead the resistance against Eggman, leaving Angel Island behind for the better half of a year to do so. In a fight, Knuckles is pretty much on par with Sonic and Metal Sonic, and he holds his own against both of them pretty well. His spiked knuckles add serious damage to any punch that he throws, and his strength is enough to smash through steel and cause volcanic eruptions or tremors. And if that wasn't enough, he's also about as fast as Sonic. Other than that, his powers mostly include a variety of brutal punches, super and hyper transformations, the fire dunk, his deep impact punches can cause explosions, he can spin dash, swimming, unlike Sonic, digging, gliding, and climbing at incredible speeds. He has emerald detection, can summon thunder arrows, his meteor crush, he has self-healing, and Knuckles' all-star move, which is used by harnessing the power of the Master Emerald, which only he knows how to do. The next new character in this game is Mecha Sonic Mark II, but we already kind of talked about him, so I'm just going to continue to the EggRobo. The EggRobos are badniks that assist Mecha Sonic Mark II in this game, following the destruction of the Death Egg, and are a recurring boss fight in the Knuckles portion of the game before being destroyed by Mecha Sonic. These little guys come up occasionally in other Sonic titles as well, and their powers include things like firing lasers, missiles, and even bombs occasionally, as well as being able to zip through the air at near Sonic speeds. There are also a few upgraded versions of them in games, including the Giant Eggman Robo in Sonic and Knuckles, the Missile EggRobo in Generations, and the Phantom Ruby-powered hard-bodied heavies, Heavy Gunner, Heavy Shinobi, Heavy Magician, Heavy Rider, and Heavy King in Sonic Mania. But for now, we're moving on to 1994's Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble, where Eggman takes the Chaos Emeralds undersea to the Atomic Destroyer before accidentally scattering them again. Sonic and Tails get to work collecting them all, and Eggman tricks Knuckles, yet again, into thinking that Sonic is the enemy. This is where Fang the Sniper comes in for his debut, as he hunts down the Chaos Emeralds himself. Eventually, Sonic and Tails take the fight below the water to find Eggman, and have to deal with Knuckles in a submarine along the way. After they defeat Knuckles, they make it to the Atomic Destroyer for a fight against Metal Sonic and then Eggman, before recovering the final emerald and saving Knuckles. This game introduces the flying spinning attack, hyper heli tails, snowboards and propeller shoes, and carries the pogo spring and rocket shoes over from Sonic Chaos, but everything else is pretty much old news. The only new character that we meet in this game is Fang the Sniper, who is a bounty hunting jerboa wanted for many crimes. He goes after the Chaos Emeralds for the money, and is regularly looking for valuables or treasures to get his hands on. He rides around on his air bike, the Marvelous Queen, and will take any job for the right price. That said, he's pretty weak and uncoordinated, and relies on traps and schemes for the most part. The Marvelous Queen and his pop gun are his most common gadgets, but he also makes use of drills, lasers, drones, missiles, and shields from time to time as well. His tail, though, is the strongest part of him, and he bounces around on it during combat. His piloting skills are also fantastic, and he can use his weapons while flying at the same time. If he were a good guy, I'm sure that he and Tails would have a ton to talk about. In the following year, 1995, we got Knuckles Chaotix. After the events of the last game, the Shrine of the Master Emerald causes an island that was home to a now-lost civilization to rise from the sea. Robotnik goes to check it out and decides to camp out on the island and try to use the Chaos Rings, which become the Dark Rings, to get his hands on the Master Emerald again. He transforms the island into a resort called the Neutrogic High Zone that doubles as his new research facility. Knuckles figures that a duty of his as the guardian of the Master Emerald is to go check out the new island as well, and when he arrives, he saves our first new character, Espio the Chameleon, from Eggman and Metal Sonic. The two join forces with Mighty the Armadillo, Vector the Crocodile, and Charmy Bee, and the group continues in their fight against Eggman. As the gang fights Metal Sonic, Eggman transforms him into Metal Sonic Kai with the power of the Dark Ring. But even that doesn't stop Knuckles and co. from saving the day and defeating both Metal Sonic and Eggman in the game's true ending. Now, I mentioned them all earlier, but Knuckles Chaotix brings us 3 new characters that all make up Team Chaotix. Espio the Chameleon is very calculated and reserved. He's a spy, a detective, and a ninja, making his self-discipline and awareness something that's really impressive. He also acts as a detective within Team Chaotix, and is very practical and intelligent. He's even fluent in 17 languages. Espio balances out his more upbeat teammates, and is often the voice of reason among them. But he isn't all work and no play either, and has a soft spot for poetry and sweet things. That said, as a chameleon, his power lies in his stealth, and he's able to blend into any environment, becoming essentially invisible. He's also very quick and nimble, and he can move around like a ninja in the shadows to execute ninjutsu with ease. As for his weapons, he tends to use things like kunai and shuriken, but he also has a leaf swirl move that is an attack that lets him disappear into a tornado of leaves, and the Chroma Camo move, which makes him invisible and increases his speed. As for his ninja arts, Espio can teleport around and throw his foes off balance, can climb walls and use his tongue to attack or as a grappling hook, and is able to pull off spin attacks and use the Chaos Emeralds to power himself up. And sticking with these scaly creatures, we have Vector the Crocodile, who is the active leader of Team Chaotix. Vector is a very skilled detective with a heart of gold. He cares about his friends and will always stand up for the weak, and he'll even do detective work for free if it means he can help someone out, which often leaves Team Chaotix in the red. He can be a little bit hot-tempered and can switch his energy up really quickly, going from kind and gentle to off the handle if things don't go his way. Despite him doing pro bono detective work from time to time, he dreams of being rich and will basically do anything to make some cash along the way as long as it's legal. One of the only things that he likes as much as money, though, is music, and that's to the point that Vector will sometimes get lost in whatever he's listening to. On the battlefield, he relies on brute strength that could even rival Knuckles, and his sharp crocodile teeth that are strong enough to crunch through metal robots. He's able to spit items out with such great force that they catch fire, and pull off spin attacks like most other characters we've talked about. Vector's crocodile paddle lets him swim effortlessly, and he can produce a brutal sonic scream and breathe fire. He can also float around by blowing a bubble with some chewing gum, or blow bubbles that pop and explode. And that brings us to our final member of Team Chaotix, Charmy Bee. This hyperactive bee keeps things silly, and his creativity is a valuable asset to the team. He's got wings that lets him fly around at speeds almost as fast as Sonic, and a stinger that he is not afraid to use. While flying at great speeds, he can generate a vortex dense enough to stand on, as well as the typical spin attacks. However, where he really exceeds is at tracking and following hunches as a detective. Knuckles isn't the only side character that gets to be the star of his own game though, as in 1995 we have Tails' Sky Patrol, in which Tails ends up on an island being terrorized by Witchcart and takes her and her cronies down to free the island from her evil ways. Scary old lady Witchcart is the big bad for the game. She rides around in a rail cart and commands the Witchcarters, Carrotia, Bearenger, and Hocke Wulf, as she threatens to transform anyone that goes against her into crystals with her magic wand. And you can't say that the Sonic series isn't consistent. Even when it's not dealing with emeralds, it's still dealing with crystals. Carrotia the rabbit is very laid back. She hates doing anything more than the bare minimum and gets angry and violent when she has to. She prefers to sleep or laze around, but gets things done when Witchcart is looming around, as she is quite afraid of the old woman. Carrotia rides around in a carrot car and fires carrot missiles and blows harmful kisses in battle. Bearenger the bear has a pretty bad temper and an even grouchier vocabulary, but he works hard as one of Witchcart's henchmen. He, like Carrotia, is pretty fearful of Witchcart and obeys pretty much all of her orders. Bearenger zooms around on a rocket car that stores bombs for him to use in battle. And finally, Hocke Wulf is a goofy guy with a mean streak. He likes picking on the small and weak and lets his arrogance get the better of him pretty often. Even so, he is also afraid of Witchcart. She has all three of them completely wrapped around her finger. In a fight though, Hocke Wulf gets around on a flying motorbike and throws explosives that float in the air. But that brings us to our next game in 1996, Sonic the Fighters, where Dr. Robotnik is at it again, and Sonic and Knuckles compete against the current holders of the Chaos Emeralds for the only spot in the one-seater Lunar Fox to go and kick Eggman's butt. At the end of the tournament, the leading fighter faces off against an Eggman-made clone of themselves, and after this, the victor takes to the stars where they take on Metal Sonic and then Eggman in his Egg Mech suit, and eventually destroys the Death Egg too. In this game, we are introduced to Bark the Polar Bear and Bean the Dynamite. Bark the Polar Bear likes snowboarding and throwing hands. He is one of Sonic's friends that were holding on to the Chaos Emeralds to keep them away from Eggman, but this is the first time that we ever meet him, or Bean for that matter, who also is holding an emerald. Bark is pretty gentle despite hanging out with the wrong crowd from time to time. He doesn't talk too much and tries to avoid fighting, but when he can't, he makes a fearsome and strong opponent. He specializes in close range, hand-to-hand combat, is fairly tanky, and can deal some serious damage, which makes sense as I'm not exactly trying to fist fight a polar bear. On the other hand, Bean the Dynamite is on the smaller side and relies more on his agility, beak, and explosives rather than his hands. Bean is a snarky little woodpecker, as well as Bark's best friend. The two of them like to play soccer or get into trouble together. However, throughout this game, each of them competes to take on Eggman through this tournament. And speaking of competing, the events of the next game take place in the World Grand Prix. In 1997 Sonic R, Eggman tricks Sonic into competing in this race and creates Metal Knuckles and the Tails doll to use as distractions and obstacles so that he can steal the emeralds from Sonic as he collects them during the race. Metal Knuckles takes a page out of Metal Sonic's book and is a cold and obviously robotic counterpart to Knuckles the Echidna. And while Knuckles has spiked fists, Metal Knuckles has blades, which really ups the danger factor. With all of Metal Sonic's powers and the addition of Knuckles gliding and wall climbing, Metal Knuckles is actually a pretty serious threat. The Tails doll, on the other hand, is pretty quick and is able to fly much like the real Tails. Tails doll is equipped with a camera linked to Eggman's network and an antenna that can boost electronic signals, but other than that, he doesn't really have much else going on in the combat department. And while this game wasn't exactly loaded with lore, the next game certainly is. To talk about 1998's Sonic Adventure, we need to go back in time about 3,000 years to the downfall of the Knuckles clan. Chief Pachacamac led the Echidnas on the raid of the Altar of the Emerald to try and steal the Chaos Emeralds in an attempt to help the clan thrive. Unfortunately for him, this went very poorly. The Altar's guardian, Chaos, used the power of the emeralds to transform into perfect chaos and fight back against the Knuckles clan, and the rampage only ended when Chief Pachacamac's daughter, Tikal, sealed herself and Chaos away inside of the Master Emerald. After this, the remaining Echidnas used the power of the Master Emerald to suspend the island that would become Angel Island into the sky, and would become the new guardians of the emeralds. Over time, the Echidna began dying out, leaving only Knuckles as their sole survivor in the present. And jumping back to the present, Eggman learns about this and shatters the Master Emerald to free Chaos in hopes of using it to raise Station Square and build Robotnik Land on the ashes. The game follows 6 storylines that you have to play through before unlocking the 7th, where Angel Island falls back to the sea and Sonic arrives to defeat Chaos and quell its rage. Sonic Adventures is the first mainline 3D Sonic game, and with this shift came some new moves for Sonic, including a mid-air homing attack and some permanent power upgrades that become available as well. Now, this game introduces a bunch of new characters to go with all that lore, starting with Chief Pachacamac. As we know, he was the leader of the Knuckles clan 3,000 years ago. His warmongering rampage ended when he was killed by his attack on Chaos, but while he was alive, Pachacamac was a fearless, ruthless leader. His greed and hunger for power motivated him to no end, and he would commit horrible acts if it meant that his clan would benefit, even trampling his daughter. And speaking of which, his daughter Tikal, on the other hand, was a much more sensitive person. Tikal was primarily raised by her grandmother, and her relationship with her father was rocky on a good day. She had befriended Chaos and the Chao at the Altar of the Emerald and gained Chaos's trust. And being the pacifist that she was, Tikal didn't agree with her father's methods and dreams of expanding the Knuckles clan's reach. She even begged him not to attack her new friend, but that didn't work out. In the end, she stood between her father and the Emeralds, but instead of listening to her, Pachacamac ordered the Knuckles clan to storm over her and continue. Like we talked about earlier, Chaos then killed her father, and Tikal sacrificed herself to put an end to the bloodshed by sealing herself and Chaos within the Master Emerald. Her soul was eventually freed along with Chaos when Eggman shattered the Emerald, and she began sending Sonic and Co. glimpses of the past to warn them about what would happen if Chaos got the Emeralds again. However, by the end of Sonic Adventure, both she and Chaos are able to peacefully pass on together. As for her abilities, Tikal is able to use the power of the Master Emerald, understand the Chao language, and upon becoming a spirit, she can take the form of a will-o-wisp that can float around and teleport herself to others. She can even create earthquakes and lightning and send people visions of the past. Now, we can't really move on from Tikal without talking about Princess Eleusian from the 1994 Sonic Adventures comic series as well. While Tikal and Princess Eleusian look strikingly similar, they are very different echidnas. Eleusian has a bit of a mean streak hidden behind her dignified exterior, especially when it comes to intruders. She values bravery and heroism, which made her take quite a liking to Sonic, and she holds the Grey Emerald and prefers to bounce around instead of walking. With that though, we can get on to Chaos. Chaos is a Chao that evolved into an immortal and godly energy being. Before the Knuckles clan took on guarding the Chaos Emeralds, Chaos filled that role and watched over the Chao as well. The Chao were very dear to him, and the only one that he ever let get close to them was Tikal. Chaos is quite powerful and has a lot of forms and abilities. By harnessing the power of the Chaos Emeralds, he is able to become more and more powerful with each gem in his possession. With no emeralds, he takes the form of Chaos Zero and is able to liquefy and change his body's shape, as well as perform some basic water manipulation. Chaos Zero can freeze the air, cause earthquakes, and even heal himself as well. With one emerald, he becomes Chaos 1 and enhances his powers, makes himself bigger, and forms bones in his arms. Chaos 2, with 2 emeralds, will grow again, gaining more bones and fins. In this form, his shapeshifting skill really starts picking up and he's able to manipulate his body a lot better than before. Chaos 3 isn't really seen that much, but in Chaos 4 he starts to look more shark-like and is given more control over water and energy. 5 also doesn't get its 15 minutes of fame, but 6 is getting really creature-y, I guess is my best way of describing it. In this form, he's able to charge attacks and make use of his vacuum breath, along with greatly enhanced hydrokinetic powers, making him a very difficult enemy. When Chaos uses all 7 Chaos Emeralds, he transforms into Perfect Chaos, a horrifying sea monster with ultimate power and strength. In this form, he can generate water spouts, floods, and energy blasts that are devastatingly strong. This is the monster that took out most of the Knuckles clan before being sealed inside the Master Emerald. When he's unleashed in the present, Sonic decides not to seal him away again, but to defeat and calm him instead, actually handling the root of the anger, rather than just ignoring it and making it someone else's problem down the line. And as such, Chaos is able to pass on peacefully once all of this has been resolved. With Chaos done, we can talk about the Chao who he lived to protect, and these guys are just adorable little fairy creatures that come in all shapes and colors. They hatch from eggs fully grown, and are very expressive and social, acting like pets or babies for the most part. The Chao tend to live in Chao gardens and have subcategories like the hero, dark, and neutral categories, each of which can be produced depending on how the Chao is raised. A neutral Chao is just a basic little guy, but a hero Chao has the appearance of an angel with big innocent eyes, a halo, and they're known for being very kind. Meanwhile, a dark Chao is mischievous and likes to play pranks. These will appear like little devils with wings and sharp teeth. At the end of a Chao's life, it has the chance to reincarnate or to cease to exist forever. If a Chao manages to reincarnate at least twice, it can turn into a Chaos Chao. In general, Chao are able to fly around, and some can even do a bit of damage in a fight, but for the most part, they're just pretty weak and often need protection themselves. Now, there's also a mass-produced Chao robot called the Omo Chao, which we saw introduced in Sonic Adventure, and he often gives the player hints during gameplay. He doesn't like being roughed up, and he understands and has a close relationship with several animals. In general though, Chow are a species that evolved from the ancients, but we'll have to talk about them later in the video. For now, let's get on with the next character from this game, Big the Cat. Big is one of the playable characters in Sonic Adventure. He is a gentle giant that lives in the Mystic Ruins and spends his time fishing with his best friend Froggy. Fittingly, much like a cat, Big enjoys a pretty carefree life and rarely ventures away from home, but when Froggy winds up missing, Big goes out looking for him. Big's size also comes with a lot of strength, and he's able to throw cars, pull off spin attacks, and can create shockwaves by body slamming his enemies. He's pretty good at swimming, has an excellent nose, and usually fights either with his hands or with his fishing rod. He can even switch out the lure to a flaming buoy or iron ball to swing around and use big fishing attacks, or he could just use the rod like an umbrella that lets him glide around like Mary Poppins. The final characters in Sonic Adventure belong to Eggman's E-Series. This gang of badniks was created to destroy Station Square, but that obviously didn't end up working out very well for Robotnik. E100 Alpha served as the prototype for the rest of the E100s, and is commonly referred to as Zero. They would eventually meet the business end of Amy's Pico Pico hammer and be destroyed, but not before putting up an electrifying fight. E101 Beta was the next in the E-Series and could shoot twin cannons. He would practice at the shooting range while Eggman worked on the next robot, E102 Gamma. Beta and Gamma would compete to see which robot would get to join the Egg Carrier crew, and when Beta lost, he was only allowed on board to be used as spare parts. From here, Robotnik torturously modded Beta and turned him into E101 Beta Mark II, a brutal weapon who mastered flight and speed. Gamma accidentally witnessed this happening and was so appalled that he betrayed Eggman and decided to free the other E-Series robots from his abusive treatment. From there, Gamma sought out his fellow E-Series brethren and terminated them to free them from Eggman's control. Even so, Beta Mark II would break free from the Egg Carrier before facing off against Gamma one last time, and the two robots destroyed each other, releasing the animals trapped inside the badniks. Following Sonic Adventure 1, we have Sonic Adventure 2 in 2001, in which Sonic and Knuckles get some crazy new rivals as we explore the opposing forces of good and evil. In the good storyline, the story follows Sonic and company as they face off against Eggman's Eclipse Cannon. The evil storyline follows Eggman's side as he attempts world domination with the help of a few of his late grandfather's inventions. Following in the previous game's footsteps with 6 playable storylines and a handful of edgy new characters, Sonic Adventure 2 is another really interesting game with a ton of lore and a lot of new Sonic abilities, including somersaults and grinding on rails, which is sick as hell. As for the new characters, we're going to start by going back 50 years and talking about Professor Gerald Robotnik, Dr. Eggman's grandfather. As part of a long line of scientists, Gerald was highly intelligent, and he wanted to use his work to make the world a better place. His 2 sons gave him 2 grandchildren, being Ivo and Maria. Maria! Among many other incredible scientific discoveries, Gerald designed the space colony Ark, the first space station built by human hands and funded by GUN, the Guardian Units of Nations. Gerald lived there among his colleagues and even got his hands on a Chaos Emerald at one point, and while working with the Emerald, he accidentally woke up an excavated Gizoid that he began to study as well. Don't worry about the Gizoid for now though, we'll talk about him a little later. The research that we need to focus on right now is Project Shadow, which was a cause dedicated to unlocking immortality. When Maria got sick with neuroimmunodeficiency syndrome, Gerald moved her onto the Ark to take care of her, and she became wrapped up in Project Shadow as Gerald used it to try and save her life. He developed the Chaos Drives to apply energy from the Chaos Emeralds to organic life, and then began working on the immortal ultimate life form. When the Black Comet's orbit brought it close to Earth, the leader of the Black Arms noticed Gerald's work and struck a deal with the scientist, whose work had come to a standstill. Black Doom offered his DNA to Project Shadow in exchange for the Chaos Emeralds by the time that the Black Comet's orbit came back around in 50 years. The deal resulted in Shadow the Hedgehog, the true ultimate life form, and Gerald got back to work on the Eclipse Cannon, a weapon to destroy the Black Comet in the future. Gerald gave Shadow a heart and a soul, willing him to not become a horrible government weapon, and Shadow wound up becoming a very close friend with Maria Robotnik. When the government learned about Gerald's deal with the Black Comet, they threatened to shut down Project Shadow, and Gerald, desperate to save his granddaughter, offered up the Gizoid from before to the government to buy some more time. And this Gizoid wound up rampaging on the Ark before Gerald could program a heart and soul into it as well. Gerald went on to make a video for Shadow telling him that he had to destroy the Black Comet with the Eclipse Cannon in 50 years, just in case anything were to happen to him, and it's a good thing that he did because Gunn came in and shut down the Ark. Gerald then sent Maria and Shadow off to run away together, and he was taken away to Prison Island. Maria wound up getting killed by a Gunn soldier while she and Shadow ran, and Gerald eventually went insane from grief. Before this, though, he came in contact with the Gizoid one last time and programmed a way for its humanity to be restored in case he went off the deep end. The dude clearly had some great foresight. I mean, this is like the second time he's done something like this, but unfortunately after this, Gerald lost his mind and began focusing on destroying humanity instead. He ended up overriding Shadow's soul with his own feelings of rage and vengeance, and the Hedgehog would soon forget about his duty to save the world and instead begin to focus on tearing it apart. One of Gerald's final actions before facing execution would be to program the Ark to crash into the Earth, but we'll get to that in a moment. Back to Maria though, in her time in the Ark Space Station Hospital, she became really homesick, and she and Shadow would often spend time gazing down at Earth. When the Gizoid went on its rampage, Maria begged Shadow to save her grandfather, and when Gerald's artificial chaos did the same, Shadow once again saved the Ark for her. Eventually, when Gunn arrived at the Ark to shut everything down, Maria helped Shadow escape, but was, as we know, shot and killed before she could secure an escape pod for herself. With her dying breath, she told Shadow to protect the world and bring hope to humanity. Now, back in the present day, an Eggman learns about Project Shadow, sets out for Prison Island to set the Hedgehog free, and demands that he bring him the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic ends up getting accused of being the one who escaped Prison Island, and soon the two hedgehogs meet briefly before Shadow warps away using a Chaos Emerald. And as a result of all this, Sonic gets captured by Gunn, which means that it's up to both Tails and Amy to storm Prison Island themselves to free him, which they manage to do just before Eggman blows the prison up. Meanwhile, Knuckles shatters the Master Emerald so that Rouge the Bat can't get her hands on it, and the two begin a race to collect the pieces. Eggman winds up with 6 emeralds, which he uses to power up the Eclipse Cannon to blow a chunk of the moon away, and Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles go on to infiltrate Eggman's hidden base before Sonic and Tails get scheming. They figure that they could give Eggman a fake Chaos Emerald and mess up his plans. However, this doesn't really work, as when Eggman captures Amy, Tails reveals the truth in order to save her, and so Eggman launches Sonic out into space via an exploding pod. A lot of explosions in this game. That said, Sonic does survive this by using the fake emerald to emulate Shadow's chaos control, and then goes on to fight the Edgelord and shut down the Eclipse Cannon as well. In the end, Eggman does get his hands on the final emerald, but when he puts it into the cannon, it activates his grandfather's doomsday plan and sends the Ark hurtling towards the planet. Sonic and the gang run to the cannon's core to try and save the day with the Master Emerald, but Shadow and Amy stay back and have a heart-to-heart. Amy snaps Shadow out of his brainwashing, and the edgy hedgehog ends up joining the good guys, remembering Maria's true parting words to him. From here, Sonic and Shadow use the emeralds to activate their super forms and defeat the final hazard on their way, and stop the Ark from smashing into the planet below before Shadow seemingly falls to his death. Now, we've gone over a lot of Shadow's backstory here, as well as his role in this game, but we haven't really talked about what he's able to do outside of single-handedly keeping Hot Topic in business. Shadow is dark and mysterious on the surface, and the trauma of losing Maria turned him into quite the ruthless loner. He was designed to be the ultimate immortal being, and that fits pretty well as he has an insane amount of strength, power, and intelligence. He basically rivals Sonic's every ability, and the two are nearly evenly matched across the board. There is literally no one who can give Sonic a run for his rings like Shadow can. And Shadow can even move at ultimate speeds, and can boost that speed even further from within an energy field or by using the light speed attack. And along those lines, he can move his limbs fast enough to generate super strong gusts of winds that can even blow away his enemies. He is bulletproof, and he can recover from just about any injury fairly quickly, which again is in line with that idea of immortality. His Black Arm heritage allows him to sense when other Black Arms are nearby and makes him immune to their paralyzing gas. Shadow can use the Chaos powers of the Chaos Emeralds to give himself insane powers on top of all of this. Chaos Control allows him to teleport and warp space and time. He can dimension hop, freeze time, and mess with the very fabric of reality. The Chaos Spear lets Shadow hurl bolts of chaos energy that can paralyze an enemy, and the Chaos Snap lets him teleport to any location. He also has the Chaos Blast, which releases an explosion of chaos energy from the emeralds with a devastating range of 20 yards. Which all seems pretty OP. But we're still not done, as we have his Doom powers. the Doom Wing, Doom Spears, Doom Blast, Doom Surf, and Doom Morph, which all pull power from his Doom DNA and make him incredibly and increasingly powerful with each power he gains. Unfortunately, when he eventually defeats Black Doom, the powers that come from him vanish as well though. As for his equipment, Shadow uses air shoes, which are jet-powered shoes that enhance his speed and can burn his enemies. In fact, Shadow is so strong that he wears limiter rings that are essentially ankle weights to keep his powers reeled in, and when he removes them, he's able to surpass his normal powers by leaps and bounds, though it is very exhausting for him. Like I mentioned before, Shadow is capable of tapping into Super State as well thanks to the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and can even tap into Hero and Dark states in some games later. But we do have one more edgy character to add in Sonic Adventures 2, and that is Rouge the Bat. She is a talented treasure hunter. In fact, she partly only appears in this game because she wants to get her hands on the Master Emerald, which ends up being shattered. Her other motivation, though, was to investigate Dr. Robotnik and Project Shadow for the United Federation, and she ends up meeting Eggman before going off on her search for the shards. Later, at the Egg Quarters, she offers to exchange Eggman's Master Emerald tracking device for the blue Chaos Emerald that she had, as well as the promise of a few others later. She goes to Prison Island to collect them, but ends up trapped on the soon-to-explode penitentiary, only for Shadow to save her using his chaos powers. Later, she fights Knuckles in space for the Emerald Shards, but ultimately hands them over after he saves her life. Soon after, Shadow reveals Rouge's secret identity as a government agent, just as things begin going bad on the Ark, and Rouge joins the brainstorming party to help save the day. And after Shadow's alleged death, Sonic gives his limiter ring to Rouge as a keepsake. Rouge, in general, is kind of the femme fatale character archetype. She is a skilled fighter, she uses her feminine charms in her favor, she has been trained by the government, and as we've seen, she is the greatest thief in the world. As you might expect for a government agent slash bounty hunter, she has a high aptitude for infiltration and sneaking around, she is a talented liar, she is manipulative, and can break into basically anywhere. But unlike your typical rogue, Rouge can hold her own in battle and even manages to do decently well against Knuckles. In fact, her kicks are so strong that she can pulverize boulders and shake the ground with them. She's also able to use spin attacks, screw kicks, and drill dives, as well as having the ability to fly, swim, and climb, which makes her a dangerous enemy on any terrain. On top of that, her training allows her to hack and code, and she can use heart bombs in battle when her fancy footwork and deadly series of kicks won't do. Finally, much like a real bat, Rouge has excellent hearing and can use the Beauty Shock to make a powerful ultrasonic wave to take enemies down. And also like a bat, she's just like kinda cool, you know? Big fan, but like not in that way. And with that, we have reached 2003's Sonic Heroes, where Eggman plans to take over the world in 3 days' time. And I know that there's a few games on this list that take place between Adventure 2 and Heroes, but a certain someone has to come back from the dead before he can appear in other games, so we gotta talk about that first. Heroes is told in 4 separate storylines. Sonic Team tries to stop Eggman, Team Rose searches for missing friends, Team Chaotix takes on a peculiar client, and Team Dark tries to unravel Eggman's secrets. As far as storyline, we're mostly going to focus on Team Dark here, since one of the game's new characters is a part of that group. Rouge the Bat breaks into Eggman's secret base, but instead of finding treasure, she finds Shadow the Hedgehog asleep in a pod. Not dead. As well as E123 Omega, but like, he isn't exactly Shadow, you know? He's cool though. She convinces Omega and the amnesiac Shadow to work with her and find Eggman, and the team follows Eggman all the way to Rail Canyon, where they learn that the one they are following was a fake, and they end up finding a broken Shadow android, which sends Shadow into an existential spiral. But the game must go on, and so Team Dark continues and eventually finds the final fortress, where they find yet another fake Eggman, as well as a stash of more Shadow droids, and we finally get the big reveal that Neo Metal Sonic, who we've talked about earlier, is behind all of this. Having betrayed Eggman and held him captive in the final fortress, Neo Metal Sonic wants to rule the world and turns into Metal Madness and then Metal Overlord. Team Sonic goes super with the Emeralds to defeat Metal Overlord, and everyone goes their separate ways, leaving behind what just might be my Nightmare Blunt rotation with Shadow, Omega, and Metal Sonic. The only real character we have to talk about here is E123 Omega. This is Eggman's latest E-Series badnik. When Rouge the Bat activated him in the secret base, he woke up and went on a robot-killing rampage before Rouge could get him to calm down. He hates Eggman for keeping him asleep tucked away in the base, wasting his potential, and vows to demolish the rest of Eggman's robots to prove that he is the best. And yes, that's right, Eggman managed to give a robot daddy issues. That said, Omega does care about the other members of Team Dark and sees them as friends. He's also very stubborn and would rather die than admit defeat in battle. Speaking of battle, Omega is a highly skilled fighter. He's basically a walking, talking weapon with cannons, flamethrowers, missile launchers, lasers, and he can even scoop up Shadow and Rouge and fire them as fireballs. He prefers a no-nonsense approach to battle and would rather smash something with his robot fist than come up with a plan. He is waterproof, can scan organic and inorganic life to examine it, and he can even use the spin attack because of course he can. Now, moving away from the last few plot-heavy games that we've talked about, we wind down a bit with Sonic Advance 2 in 2002. Sonic Advance 1 didn't really have much revolutionary happen in it, but its sequel does give us a few new characters. In this game, Eggman kidnaps a bunch of animals, including Tails, Knuckles, and Vanilla the Rabbit. Sonic rushes over to stop whatever scheme of world domination he is working on, and along the way he meets and rescues Vanilla's daughter, Cream the Rabbit. I'm sorry, do what to the rabbit? While ignoring that unfortunate name, Cream tags along with Sonic to go save her mom. After saving Tails and Knuckles, the whole gang ends up at Eggman's Egg Utopia space station and saves the day. Nothing too wild this time. Sonic makes use of the mid-air trick actions and boost mode to boost his speed and change direction in the air, but not much else to talk about in terms of his abilities. There's also not much else to say about Vanilla other than she lives in a cottage with her daughter and their chows, Chocola and Cheese. Yes, Vanilla, Chocola, and Cream and Cheese. Very clever, Sega. I see what you did there. But outside of that, Vanilla's just kind of a loving mom, and there's not much else to her. But speaking of her daughter, Cream is very much like her mother, and occasionally goes out on adventures with Sonic. She is brave and empathetic, and she hates fighting, but she'll do it if she has to. Cream is best friends with Amy Rose, which makes like a ton of sense. They're both so kind and care about other people, and it's only natural that they would get along so well. Between Cream and her apparently very powerful Chow Cheese, they can apparently stand up to some of Eggman's mechs. Cream and Cheese use a range of Chow-based attacks like Chow Tornado, Chow Arch, Chow Winder, Chow Salam, Chow Salam, Chow Upper, Chow Dash, Chow Circle, Chow Cannon, Chow Revolution, Chow Rush, Chow Knight, and Chow Spinning Attack, just to name a few. I am so tired of that word. But on top of all that, Cream can also use her ears to fly, kind of like Tails' tails, and she can heal herself and pull off spin attacks, though that makes up the most of her abilities outside of Sonic Battle, where she uses the Omo Chow bombs in battle. And speaking of which, that brings us to 2003's Sonic Battle. This takes us back in time again, this time about 4,000 years, when the fourth great civilization used the energy of the Chaos Emeralds to create the Gizoid. This was a sentient weapon that can learn and steal techniques through combat. Now, if the name Gizoid sounds familiar, that's because it's the name of the robot that Gerald Robotnik traded in for more time on Project Shadow 50 years ago. Now, this game has 8 playable storylines, which follow Sonic, Tails, Rouge, Knuckles, Amy, Cream, Shadow, and our new character, Emerald the Gizoid. Eggman gets a hold of the Gizoid, but when he can't get it to work the way he wants, he copies his data and puts it into his E121 Phi Badniks, and then throws the Gizoid away. The Phis are powered by Chaos Emerald shards, much like the Gizoids run on whole Chaos Emeralds. Meanwhile, the President of the United Federation sends Rouge to collect intel on the Gizoid and learns about the conditions for forming a link with it, which involve having all 7 emeralds and a keyword. Rouge fights one of the E121s and takes its shards before going on search for the robot, and Eggman decides that he actually wants the Gizoid after all and chases after them. Soon, Sonic finds the discarded robot and brings Tails to fix it. They name the Gizoid Emerald and learn that it's powered by Chaos Emeralds, and they start teaching it new moves before going to pay Knuckles a visit. Knuckles then lends them the Emerald, and Emerald gains the ability to speak. Tails wants to take the robot to the central lab to examine it further, but Emerald only listens to Sonic, until Sonic tells the robot to do what Tails says to. With that, they get to the lab, but security won't let them in, and Rouge arrives and offers her lab pass to Tails if he can beat her in a fight. Inside the lab, Tails finds out what Emerald is, and what he's truly capable of, and sets off a bunch of alarms in the process. Shadow then shows up and tries to convince Tails to let him destroy the robot, and Rouge breaks up the fight before they're all caught by security. Back at the beach, Rouge tells Sonic that Emerald can be reset with the emeralds, and before Rouge takes off, she gets Sonic to tell Emerald to listen to her as well. Emerald ends up with 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and Shadow pays Sonic a visit hoping to destroy Emerald. But Sonic tells Shadow that Emerald isn't capable of mass destruction like the Hedgehog is worried about, because he has a heart just like Shadow does. And to prove this, Sonic actually sends Emerald to travel with Shadow, and eventually Shadow gives him the final Emerald and tells him to bring hope to humanity. And with Maria's parting words, Emerald is reset and freed from being a living weapon. But there's still one thing left to do. Sonic and Tails send Emerald to face Eggman and the final Egg Blaster on the new Death Egg. But this goes horribly wrong and he is captured by Eggman. Eggman then forms a link with Emerald and tries to force him to destroy the world, but Sonic shows up and deactivates the final egg, unfortunately losing Emerald to Gerald Robotnik's final safeguard in the process. The only real character that we gotta talk about here is Emerald himself, who was a robot that was eager to learn. He loved to fight and would even refer to sparring as playing. However, Emerald went on to learn about emotions as he bonded with Sonic and their friends. And he developed a decent sense of empathy thanks to Cream, but in his time pre-Sonic, Emerald was responsible for some pretty horrific stuff, and clearly lived a very scary life. And with 4,000 years of combat knowledge ripped from his friends and enemies, I don't really find that hard to believe. The following year, in 2004, we got Sonic Advance 3, in which Eggman takes the data he copied from Emerald to create Gemerald, the ultimate fighting robot. Then he uses the Chaos Control to split the Earth into 7 different realities, hoping to divide and conquer the planet. Sonic and the gang join together to collect the emeralds and put the world back, and have to face off against the Doctor and Gemerald many times along the way. In the end, the Master Emerald is used to put the world back together, and in the true ending, Gemerald betrays Eggman, stealing the Chaos Emeralds and transforming into Ultimate Gemerald. Sonic goes super, and he and Eggman take to the stars to defeat Gemerald together. After which he washes up on a beach a few days later and is reprogrammed by Tails to be kind like Emerald was. The robot would then befriend and go on to live with Cream and Vanilla. Gemerald comes equipped with all 4,000 years of Emerald's combat knowledge, a jetpack, and missiles. He's able to teleport and shield himself with energy and can merge with machines to pilot them from inside their mainframes. Meanwhile, Ultimate Gemerald has 4 arms, claws, and can fire missiles and freezing beams while using the energy of the Chaos Emeralds. Following Sonic Advance 3 is 2005's Shadow the Hedgehog, in which we go through Shadow's past. The Black Comet's 50-year orbit cycle had swung back around, and it's time for a still amnesiac Shadow to pay up on a debt that he isn't even really aware of. The Black Arms begin their invasion, and Shadow is visited by Black Doom, who tells him to get the Chaos Emeralds for him. After completing all the main story endings, you unlock the true ending, where Shadow uses the Eclipse Cannon to defeat Black Doom and fulfills his 50-year prophecy. Throughout the entire game, though, we're only introduced to 2 new characters, being Black Doom and the Commander. So let's start with Black Doom, who is the leader of an alien army that resides on the Black Comet. Put off by humanity, he plotted to control the population of Earth and use them as an energy source. However, as he was unable to land the comet on Earth itself, Black Doom made a deal with Gerald Robotnik, his blood for the Chaos Emeralds, in which he planned to use to Chaos Warp the comet onto Earth's surface. Doom is able to command his army through a hive mind, and his immortal blood was the key to developing Shadow the Hedgehog. This immortality obviously lends itself to Black Doom, and even if he is killed, he can regenerate via Black Arms matter. He and Shadow are also linked, and as Shadow gains Doom powers, he increases Black Doom's powers as well. And this eventually let him turn into the fire-breathing, laser-shooting Devil Doom, and later the terrain-shifting Neo Devil Doom. He is capable of mind control and paralyzes his foes with gas, although Shadow is immune to both. He's also able to levitate, teleport, and phase through solids. He prefers to use Doom's Eye drones rather than put himself in harm's way, despite being immortal, but when he does make it to the battlefield, his swift strike is a terrifying and deadly experience. Aside from Doom, we have Commander Abraham Towers, aka the Commander, who is a military leader at Gun. He was born on the Ark space station, and as an old friend of Maria Robotnik, he carries a grudge against Shadow and blames him for Maria's death, even in adulthood. During the events of the game, he and everyone else learned the truth about Shadow's birth and that Gerald Robotnik wasn't always evil. With that, we can move on to Sonic Rush in 2005, where Eggman and Eggman Nega steal the Soul Dimension's Soul Emeralds, which brings Blaze the Cat to the universe that we know from the Sonic games and threatens both dimensions. Eggman and Nega aren't satisfied with the Soul Emeralds, though. They want the Chaos Emeralds as well, so that they can make an interdimensional Eggman land. Sonic and Blaze go about the game collecting all of the emeralds, and in the final showdown, they transform into Super Sonic and Burning Blaze to fight the Eggmen, save the universes, and send Blaze home. Again, only 2 new characters in this game, the first of which is Blaze the Cat, who is an Imperial princess from the Soul Empire of another dimension. She guards these Soul Emeralds and takes her role very seriously, often shutting people out and keeping to herself to do so. She is disciplined, refined, and ladylike, and is the perfect picture of what a princess might want to be. When she snaps though, she really snaps and is prone to aggressive outbursts and rash decisions. However, after her adventures with Sonic and the gang, she does loosen up and learns to trust her friends. On the battlefield though, she is a real force to be reckoned with. She is more than strong enough to go out without her guards and do all things by herself. She commands fire, and her pyrokinesis is devastatingly powerful. On top of that, she doesn't really hold back in fights and will shoot to kill. She's able to fire meteors that are strong enough to leave craters in bedrock. She can fire charge her attack, blast fire out of the ground, and teleport through flames. She often turns herself into a scorching weapon and uses her own body in her pyrotechnics with her fire boost or by turning into a flaming tornado. Then we have Eggman Nega, who is a descendant of Dr. Eggman from the future. In this game, however, he tells Eggman that he is his counterpart from the Soul Dimension. Nega thinks of Eggman as a failure and hates the reputation that he has given the Eggman name. He is eerily polite and calm, unlike his ancestor, and has bigger dreams of domination than Eggman ever did. While Eggman wanted to dominate, Nega wants to destroy and conquer. And that's pretty possible, as he is just as smart as Eggman, but 10 times as sneaky. He created armies of robots and uses a jetpack, as well as a device that lets him travel through time and hop dimensions, just as a few examples of what he's capable of. From there, we move on to the 15th anniversary of Sonic in 2006, with Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Sonic 06 takes place in the Principality of Soliana, where the people worship the eternal sun god Solaris in the sentient flame of hope. Before we can get into that, we do need to go into the past again, and the future. That's right, more time travel. Beginning in the past, 10 years ago, the Duke of Soliana established the Solaris Project to harness the power of Solaris in hopes of controlling the sands of time. But taming a god rarely goes as planned, and Solaris splits into 2, emerging as Iblis and Mephiles. As well, this process ultimately led to the Duke losing his life as well. To escape the literal wrath of the sun, Iblis was sealed away with a Chaos Emerald by the Duke inside of Princess Elise. Meanwhile, Mephiles was sealed in the Scepter of Darkness by Shadow, who had traveled back in time with Silver the Hedgehog to learn about Project Solaris. Now, 200 years in the future, and Silver the Hedgehog is in an endless loop of fighting Iblis every time he resurrects. Mephiles the Dark convinces Silver that the Day of Disaster was all Sonic's fault, and so Silver plans to go back in time and kill Sonic before he can release Iblis and destroy everything else as a result. And ultimately, Mephiles sends himself and Silver to the present, where they are separated. Now, in the present, when the city takes part in the Festival of the Sun, Soliana's Princess Elise has a vision of Iblis burning the city to the ground. Soon, Dr. Eggman arrives and captures her, hoping to steal her Chaos Emerald and information on the flames of disaster so that he can take control of time, and Sonic arrives to put a stop to it. Cue a bunch of kidnappings and more time travel shenanigans as Sonic tries to stop Elise from dying on the egg carrier. The plot of this game isn't super important right now though, because at the end of the game, they actually just go back before anything happened and erase the whole plot of the game. Isn't that a fun trope that is so great every time they use it? That said, we can talk about 3 characters here, starting with Mephiles the Dark, who is the mind of Solaris, born in the aftermath of the Solaris Project. He was sealed in the Scepter of Darkness by Shadow in the past, and stayed there until the present when he was accidentally released by Shadow and Rouge. From here, Mephiles gained a physical form built from Shadow's shadow, and made it his life's mission to reunite with Iblis and resurrect Solaris. When Silver fails to kill Sonic, Mephiles eventually takes a stab at it. Get it? Because he impales Sonic. And this time he succeeds, and as Elise sobs for her fallen friend, Iblis is freed and Solaris is reformed. Shadow, Silver, and eventually a resurrected Sonic team up to take Solaris down with the Super Chaos Emerald's power. And afterwards, Elise blows out the Flame of Hope in the past, making sure that none of these events ever happened. Mephiles is a calculated, cold-blooded killer who has no mercy and no remorse. And he definitely has no regard for humanity. He is strong, sturdy, and probably invincible. No fight in the game could keep him down for long, and the only way that we can stop him from coming back was to erase him from existence entirely. He can use the emeralds to show people visions, blind people, and produce shockwaves. His ability to time travel freely lets him plot and scheme to do things over, and he can generate balls of darkness to shoot at his enemies at will. He can hide in people's shadows and can summon his own, which he can fuse with to become a huge laser-shooting monster. And if that's not enough, he can summon a crystal energy blade, which is the weapon that kills Sonic, and in an appearance in a later game, we even see him being able to manipulate and swim through corruption. Now, we have gone over most of Elise's story, but let's go through it quick as a refresher. Princess Elise lost her memories as a child and was prompted by her father, the Duke of Soliana, to begin the Solaris Project so that they could travel through time and see the Duchess again. And the Duke sealed the resulting Iblis away in his own daughter before telling her never to cry, and dying, which is like the worst time to tell your daughter that she can never cry again, or a terrifying demon will explode out of her and kill everyone. The events of the game take place, Elise goes back in time after the final fight, and blows out the Flame of Hope before the Solaris Project can ever go wrong. In doing so, they make sure that the events of the game don't take place, Sonic and Elise never meet, the end. The game makes me feel tired, but we aren't just done with it yet, because we have Silver the Hedgehog. Silver is the final new character that we meet in this game, and is from Crisis City, the ruins of Soliana 200 years in the future. He stands for hope and justice, and spent his time fighting for the future before Mephiles sends him to the past. All Silver wants is a life of peace, and he's a pretty positive guy that looks at life as beautiful and something to cherish, even though he can come across as pretty arrogant at times. Silver mostly fights through psychokinesis and his psychic abilities, which allow him to levitate, fly, crush or warp steel, manipulate other people's energy attacks, make protective barriers, and immobilize his enemies. His Meteor Smash attack lets him mash ruins and debris into a giant meteor using his psychic power, and then send it rolling towards his enemies. He has control over particles, like when he destroys the nanobot bacteriophage. He can manifest psychic blades, produce shockwaves, and telekinetic battering rams. He's also just very fast and strong aside from all that. He can use spin attacks and runs alongside Sonic and Shadow without getting tired, and he can take a hit like nobody's business. On top of all of that, obviously he can use the power of the Chaos Emeralds to become Super Silver. Eggman doesn't stop scheming for long though, and in the same year, 2006, we get Sonic Riders, where he organizes a Grand Prix to get the Chaos Emeralds and works with the Babylon Rogues to try and steal their key to the Babylon Garden. The important thing for us in this game is the Rogues, Storm the Albatross, Jet the Hawk, and Wave the Swallow. The Babylon Rogues are a generational group of alien thieves who used to live on Babylon Garden, an island floating in the sky that is now hidden underground. The Babylonians were responsible for creating the magic carpet that would later inspire the extreme gear of this game. With Jet the Hawk as their leader, the Babylon Rogues have made quite the name for themselves as worldwide thieves. Jet succeeded his father as the new leader of the Rogues, and holds the key to the Babylon Garden. Eggman goes on to tell him that they need to use the emeralds to find the Babylon Garden, and the Rogues join forces with the Doctor to take on Sonic in the process. Jet is an expert extreme gear user. He wins Eggman's Grand Prix, albeit a little bit dishonestly, and he claims his prize, the Chaos Emeralds. He then uses the emeralds and the key to unearth the Babylon Garden, and Eggman steals that key from him to take its treasure. He and Sonic then chase after Eggman, and this time Sonic wins their race and gives the key back to the Rogues, before facing off against the Babylon Guardian and uncovering the treasure, which is a magic carpet. Jet mostly fights with his War Fans, a set of razor-sharp weapons made out of his own feathers that can generate tornadoes. He is an extraordinary pilot and master extreme gear user, who often is referred to as the legendary Wind Master, and can probably travel at speeds faster than Sonic when he's up on his Type J. But with all that extreme gear, the Babylon Rogues surely need a mechanic, and that's where Wave the Swallow comes in. Wave is an expert in extreme gear, and she'll make sure that you know it. She is confident in her skills and her knowledge, and believes that her work is better than anyone else's. That said, she can be a bit of a jerk, but she's really just very serious about her job, and is usually the most sensible rogue, so she often needs to keep her team focused. Wave can engineer pretty much any piece of tech and is incredibly smart. Her necklace lets her project holograms and data, and most importantly, wakes her up on time. She is an incredible extreme gear user and uses the Type W board, which she of course made herself, though in a fight, she prefers to use a wrench or explosives. And lastly, we have Storm the Albatross, the third and final member of the current generation of the Babylon Rogues. If Wave is the brains of the operation, then Storm is definitely the brawn. He is a little bit brainless, but there's nothing wrong with that. We love a himbo in this house. He is pretty quick to anger, and he's just about always ready to handle things with his fists. Jet's opinion is really important to Storm, and it's clear that he really looks up to him and wants to be an asset to his boss. Storm is strong enough to produce powerful gusts of winds and smash through boulders or cars with ease. He is the worst extreme gear user of the three, but he's still an excellent rider overall, as long as he doesn't have to stop his Type S too quickly. Now, coming off the racetrack and entering 2007, we get straight into Sonic Rush Adventures, where Sonic and Tails wind up in the Soul Dimension and help Blaze the Cat put a stop to Captain Whisker and his robots, and later Dr. Eggman and Eggman Nega, from stealing the Jeweled Scepter. On their journey, Sonic and Tails meet Marine the Raccoon, who goes on this adventure with them. Marine grew up with the dreams of traveling the world as a ship captain. When she was 7 years old, she began to learn about sailing and how to make her own ship, and she eventually built the SS Marine to finally take her to the sea. Unfortunately, she crashed it while she was testing it out. Luckily, by that point, she had already met Sonic and Tails built her a new ship called the Wave Cyclone. Marine can be a little bit difficult to get used to. She talks a mile a minute, gets into trouble, throws tantrums, and she's afraid of ghosts, but at the end of the day, I think she's endearing enough overall. That said, her only real power that we are able to see is her ability to shoot blasts of water from her fists. The villain of this game, Captain Whisker, is a robot made by Eggman Nega to find the Jeweled Scepter. Whisker and his robot pirate crew meet their end when they went down with their ship and sank to the bottom of the sea, though. He is a forgetful old pirate, and most people can't take him seriously, and when he's not with his crew, he's measurably less tough. That doesn't mean he isn't evil, though. Whisker is perfectly capable of holding hostages and torturing them, and he has a mean temper that's easy to trigger. As for his abilities, Whisker is a stocky, durable robot, and his size gives him a lot of strength to play around with. His heavy body lets him produce shockwaves, his arms can shoot off like missiles, and he can breathe fire because, of course he can. The only other relevant character for this game is his right-hand man, Johnny. Johnny is a robot pirate, but in the final battle, he ran away and left Whisker to his own fate. Johnny loves to race people and tends to attack by charging at his foes with his big head, but outside of that, there's not much here either. Now, keeping on this theme of visiting other worlds, we have 2007's Sonic and the Secret Rings, where Sonic ends up inside the book Arabian Nights and needs to defeat Erazor Djinn before he can escape to the real world. When Sonic arrives in the book world, he is shot by Erazor's cursed arrow and told to bring him the 7 world rings. This is a trick though, as whoever collects the rings will be sacrificed to open the gate between worlds. In this game, Sonic has an arsenal of 104 different moves that can be equipped and changed around to suit the player's needs. The first character we meet is Shara, the genie of the ring. She comes to Sonic and begs him to help her defeat Erazor. In the past, Shara and Erazor were actually involved, and it comes up at the end of the game when she gives Erazor the rings and says that she wants to be with him again. Sonic tells her to do what she thinks is right, and Shara is torn, but ultimately ends up taking a fatal blow in Sonic's place. Thankfully, Sonic brings her back to life in the end when he gains control of Erazor's lamp. Shara is very likable. She is kind and selfless, and has a strong sense of morals that comes out on top at the end. As a genie, she can grant wishes, fly, and even turn into smoke. All of which is pretty rad. The other genie, Erazor Djinn, is a much stronger genie than Shara, and wants to escape to the real world where he can do more damage. In the past, he was sealed away in a magic lamp where he was trapped until he could grant 100 people's wishes. In the final battle, when Shara died, Sonic was able to use 3 of the rings to become Darkspine Sonic, and Erazor became Alf Layla Wa Layla, the incomplete demon genie. Not sure if I pronounced that right, it's been a while since I've actually played this game. Sonic ultimately defeats Erazor and puts him back in his lamp, at which point he makes 3 wishes on the lamp to bring Shara back, undo all the damage that Erazor did, and seal him away forever. And for some extra security, Sonic then drops the lamp into a vat of lava. Erazor Djinn's powers lie in his magic. He can put life-threatening curses on people, like the one that he put on Sonic. He can absorb the words of the book that he's in to make himself more powerful. He can summon armies, fly, teleport, power himself and his sword with energy, turn into smoke, change his size, and grant virtually any wish. In his transformed state, he grows even stronger with reality warping, the multi-dimensional power of the rings, and can shoot energy bolts, produce fire from his scorpion tail, and even create voids and spirit blasts. Lastly, we have Darkspine Sonic, who was created out of Sonic's rage, sadness, and hatred as a result of Shara's death. In this form, he can divert and send back strong attacks, can manipulate the elements of wind, fire, and darkness, and can even use moves like Time Break, which slows down time, without needing the power of Shara's ring. But speaking of games that give us new Sonic transformations, we have 2008's Sonic Unleashed, which gave us the Sonic the Werehog transformation. Split between daytime gameplay as Sonic and nighttime as the Werehog, in this game, Eggman shatters the world with the Chaos Emeralds, resulting in the light and dark Gaia emerging. And Sonic gets given the gift of wolfing out. When Sonic absorbs the negative energy of the Chaos Emeralds, he gains this new form. The Werehog form trades Sonic's speed for strength and stretchy arms for some reason, although it only lasts while the sun is down. He has razor-sharp claws and can use the Dark Gaia Force to enter Unleashed mode, where he develops a blue aura and becomes even stronger. Soon after gaining his Werehog form, Sonic meets the Amnesiac Chip, who we later learn is Light Gaia, and they head to the lab of Professor Pickle, hoping to make a plan of action. Pickle tells them to take the emeralds to the Gaia temples, which will pretty much fix everything. Along the way, Chip gets his memories back, and he and Sonic head towards the final temple and a battle that would bring them to the Earth's core. Dark Gaia arrives and absorbs Sonic's negative energy, stripping him of his Werehog powers and speeding up his own growth into perfect Dark Gaia. As I mentioned, we get the new character of Professor Pickle in here, who is a professor of ancient lit at Spagonia University, who's done loads of research on the Gaia manuscripts and developed the uncanny camera to combat Dark Gaia's minion's ability. Then we have SA-55, who is Eggman's latest robot companion in this game. He helps the Doctor try to make use of Dark Gaia's power. He is comedically blunt, a little bit rude, and likes to make fun of Eggman. He can also become travel-sized, which I just think is kind of fun. Light and Dark Gaia are where we start getting a little bit more into things. They are primordial beings of limitless energy, whose existences are intertwined. The two of them have been in a cycle of fighting for both destruction and rebirth since the dawn of time, and Professor Pickle assumes that the two are the manifestations of the desire for balance between light and dark, or good or evil. Whenever the time of awakening would cycle back around, Dark Gaia would split the Earth apart, and Light Gaia would wake up to put Dark Gaia to sleep and rebuild the Earth before going back to sleep themselves. In Sonic Unleashed, however, Eggman woke them both up prematurely, and it left Light with amnesia, and Dark not quite strong enough to get things done, which resulted in him absorbing Sonic's Werehog powers to fill the gap. When Dark becomes perfect Dark Gaia, Light calls upon the Gaia Temples to become Gaia Colossus, and with the help of Sonic, Dark Gaia was sealed inside the planet once again. So, Dark Gaia's powers and goals are mostly related to ripping the world apart and snuffing out any piece of life on Earth. We can assume that he can withstand any heat as he sleeps in the core of the Earth, and he excels at taking the negative energy of the world and harnessing it as his power. He can also use that energy to power machinery and create dark minions, as well as fire beams of pure evil and darkness. As perfect Dark Gaia, he can use telekinesis and create energy blasts. He can charge up energy into his claws for extra damage slashing, create force fields, and shoot paralyzing orbs. With that though, we can go back into the Sonic Storybook series with 2009's Sonic and the Black Knight, who introduces a whole bunch of new characters. In this one, Sonic is summoned by Merlina, the Wizard of Camelot, where he manages to take care of the knights chasing after her. They escape together, and the Black Knight, the evil King Arthur, sends out his 3 Knights of the Round Table to kill them. Merlina trains Sonic in swordsmanship and sends him to find Caliburn, the Talking Sword, to combat the Black Knight's immortality-granting scabbard, Excalibur. Merlina is the granddaughter of Merlin and is the royal wizard of Camelot, who wants to take the scabbard of Excalibur from King Arthur and use its powers of immortality on the land of Camelot, creating a kingdom that will live forever, fueled by magical equilibrium. This wouldn't be so bad if Excalibur's scabbard weren't like fueled by the devil and the underworld or whatever, but Sonic doesn't know that those are Merlina's plans until way too late in the story. Sonic has to wrestle the scabbard away from her in the end, and is only able to do so with Excalibur itself. Merlina's mystical mastery was passed down to her by her grandfather, and her status as the royal wizard alone tells us that her high ancient magic is nothing to scoff at. She's able to teleport, summon beings from other worlds, and she can even keep an eye on Sonic when she's not around. When she has the scabbard, she becomes the Dark Queen and is able to manipulate the forces of the underworld and become an energy-slinging phantom. But Merlina isn't the only one that came from Merlin. King Arthur was actually also made by Merlin's hand to bring peace to the kingdom. As he grew up, Arthur pulled Caliburn out of the stone that it was embedded in, and he would go on to inherit the throne as its true ruler. Arthur gathered his knights of the Round Table, Sir Galahad, Sir Gawain, Sir Lamorak, Sir Lancelot, and Sir Percival, and became a very beloved king. Eventually, Caliburn broke and went to Nimue, where he was given Excalibur and its scabbard, making Arthur immortal. He began his spiral into evil and lost Excalibur, replacing it with Deathcalibur, and would use his powers to summon knights of the underworld to serve under him. In battle, he can produce balls of energy or bolts of lightning, and is obviously very skilled with a sword. Deathcalibur makes portals to the underworld, which he can now summon his knights through, and can also create portals to teleport or send attacks through with as well. In the end, Sonic was able to defeat him by using the swords he received from the Knights of the Round Table, and it was revealed that Arthur had been an illusion created by Merlin the whole time. And speaking of the Knights of the Round Table, it's time that we talk about King Arthur's most trusted and loyal servants. All of them are exceedingly good at sword fighting. Sir Percival once began a search for the Holy Grail in the past, and Sir Lancelot was the king's right-hand man and closest knight. The Knights of the Round Table all offer their swords up to Sonic to help him save the day, and the result allows him to summon Excalibur and become Excalibur Sonic. This is an armor-clad power-up that Sonic achieves by using the legendary sword. His expert sword skills are on full display in this form, and he can deflect shattering blows, slice through just about anything, and use magical energy that elevates his artful swordsmanship to dangerously fierce new heights. Plus, he can fly, which is always cool. But Sonic wouldn't have been able to make it this far if he didn't have help from our last two characters, Nimue, the Lady of the Lake, who once gave Excalibur to King Arthur. When he became evil, she felt horrible guilt, and when Sonic came around, she taught him how to get around Arthur's immortality and right her past wrong. Later, she told him about the sacred swords and the barrier stones as well. Nimue is an incredible magic user and enchantress capable of several different spells. She can disguise herself as other beings, teleport, and project live holograms of things happening in other places around the world. But Sonic truly owes it all to Caliburn. We know about his past with Arthur, but what really happened when Arthur lost Excalibur? When the sword transformed into Deathscalibur, it also split apart into the sacred swords belonging to the Knights of the Round Table, and into Caliburn, who ended up in the Misty Lake. Sonic eventually found Caliburn and released him from the stone, and they would go on their merry way together. Caliburn is a snarky yet gentlemanly companion that teaches Sonic the ways of a knight. With the proper weapon maintenance, Caliburn is a piercing blade capable of slicing through metal. He can levitate and transform into Excalibur, his true form, and when he does so, he can repel magic, and with the help of Excalibur Sonic, even create a meteor of energy that can cut down anything. But with that, we leave the storybook world for good and take a turn to the extraterrestrial in Sonic Colors in 2010. In this game, Sonic and Tails go to Egg Planet Park, where they meet the Wisps, colorful aliens that have been brought over and captured by Eggman. The Doctor wants to harness the Wisps' various powers, and Sonic obviously won't stand for that. The Wisps are an alien race that takes on several shapes, colors, and powers. These floating creatures are often friendly and like to play with others, and run on hyper-go-on energy. Without it, they become Nega Wisps. A few Wisps lend Sonic their powers during the game. The white one lets the player use their boost for longer, while the red one uses Red Burst, a power that turns Sonic into a ball of flames that can move, jump around, and charge up explosions that can take down enemies and propel Sonic into the air. The Yellow Wisp gives him the power Yellow Drill, which lets Sonic drill through the ground or whirl through water. The Orange Wisps are more emotional than the rest, and use the Orange Rocket power to turn Sonic into a powerful rocket, and the Cyan Wisp is very fast and likes to talk. They use the cyan laser power to turn Sonic into a laser beam. The purple and violet wisps are actually types of Nega wisps, which, if we remember, occurs when a wisp runs out of Hyper Go-On energy. Nega wisps are violent, but not necessarily evil. Violet ones can use Violet Void, which makes the user into a black hole that can phase through objects and grow based on how much they suck up. The purple wisps use Purple Frenzy to make the user go berserk and chomp down with its huge teeth. Like the Violet Void, whatever a Purple Frenzy user eats adds on to its size. There are more colors of wisps, but those are the ones that are important in this game, so I'm going to move on to Yacker for now. Yacker is a white wisp that tags along with Sonic and Tails, well, mostly Tails, and teaches them about wisps. Sonic originally saves them from Orbot and Cubot, and Tails invents a translation device to help them communicate with each other. Near the end of the game, Yacker goes into space and helps all the purple and violet wisps turn back to normal, and in the DS version of the game, Yacker tells Sonic and Tails about the Mother Wisp that Eggman had turned into the Nega Mother Wisp, and so Super Sonic goes on to defeat her, allowing her to return to normal as well. Speaking of which though, the Mother Wisp created every wisp and the planet that they live on, and turned into the rampaging Nega Mother Wisp, who can produce Hyper Go-On that sticks to her enemies and slows them down, or hit them with enough force to blow them away. She can make lasers and shockwaves and recover her strength very easily. Sonic helped her return to normal, and she was very grateful for this assistance. Normally, Mother Wisp is a kind and maternal character. She has the power to create cosmic bodies like Planet Wisp, and can make roads of energy, teleport, and produce populations of wisps with ease. This game also introduced us to Orbot and Cubot, who are described by Sonic as dim-witted robots and serve as Eggman's henchmen this time around. They were given the job of capturing wisps, and at the end of the game, they help Eggman get home from space. Despite Sonic calling them stupid, Orbot is actually quite intelligent, and despite being Eggman's devoted henchman, he doesn't like the Doc and criticizes him and his failures. We can also assume that based on his appearance and shrink into a travel-sized ball, that he is the next iteration of the SA-55 robot from Sonic Unleashed. Cubot, on the other hand, is as dim-witted as Sonic says. He speaks in funny accents and likes to laze around. Cubot can become a travel-sized cube similar to Orbot. He can levitate, make holograms, and change his personality to match his accent. With that, we can skip forward a few years to 2013's Sonic Lost World, where Sonic and Tails crash land on Lost Hex and liberate it from Eggman. This time, Eggman is working with the Deadly Six, which is a group of Zeddy demons led by Zavok with the ability to take over Eggman's robots. Sonic fights two of the six before unknowingly freeing the Deadly Six from Eggman's control by throwing away the cacophonic conch, which stifles their powers, and Sonic and Tails have to work with Eggman, of all people, to take down the Deadly Six one by one, before they can use Eggman's extractor to make themselves invincible. Zavok, like I mentioned, is the leader of the Deadly Six. He is ruthless, arrogant, power-hungry, and not at all above issuing colorful threats to his enemies. He prefers to learn about his opponents rather than go in to fight blindly, and wants to destroy the planet to make himself stronger. In the past, he was trained by Master Zik, who led him to his role as a vicious warrior. In combat, Zavok swings with brutal, heavy punches and can jump very high and across long distances. He can fly and produce blasts of fire, as well as manipulate electromagnetic currents to control robots and mechs, which all of the Deadly Six are able to do. Zavok can transform into Giant Zavok, where he can shoot lasers and fire, and destroy just about anything with sheer strength alone. Master Zik is, as I mentioned, the one who trained Zavok to be a bloodthirsty war machine, and in his old age, he has a lot of wisdom. He's a pretty small guy, but that doesn't mean he isn't mighty. In fact, he believes that the weak should be left behind, and can pull off some literally killer martial arts moves. On top of this, Zik is able to move things with his mind, commanding Giant Fruit and his staff with only his thoughts. He can fly, make balls of energy, and use his staff as a weapon for big bonks. Zaz is edgy, obnoxious, and unpredictable. He loves getting in fights and loves to rampage even more. He is fast, strong, and has a great grip. He can make energy balls and explosives, and his claws can pierce through just about anything. On top of that, he uses a weapon called the Moon Mech, a huge yellow ball with a glowing face that Zaz gets around on and fires missiles from. Xena is the only girl of the group. She is pretty self-serving and prefers to laze around doing her nails than go out to actually fight anyone. When she does fight though, she uses bombs and energy tethers that whip around, and if latched onto something, she can control it like a marionette. Zom Zom is an ultra-hungry giant. He's always thinking about his next meal and doesn't really have a lot else going on. In a fight, he uses his size and weight to crush opponents beneath him. He's fast enough to generate tornadoes and strong enough to jump high into the air, despite his size. He can also burrow and dig through the ground like a drill. And the final member of the Deadly Six is Zor, the little emo spy of the group. Just looking at this guy is an absolute bummer, and talking to him is even worse. Zor can bust up rocks with his bare hands and summon a horde of bats from the shadows. He can shoot blasts of energy and create shadow clones of himself as well using those bats. This game actually also introduced a few more wisps as well. The Black Wisp has the power Black Bomb, which lets the user turn into an explosion. The Crimson Wisp has the Crimson Eagle power, which lets the person transform into an eagle. Green similarly gives Green Hover, letting the user float around a bit. Indigo uses the Indigo Asteroid, which absorbs scraps to make a glowing celestial body with gravitational pull. And finally, Magenta gives off Magenta Rhythm, letting the user bounce around in the air and collect musical notes. Moving forward once again to 2017 this time with Sonic Forces, where Eggman actually beats Sonic for once and takes him captive. Eggman then spends the next 6 months expanding his empire in the Hedgehog's absence, and during that time, Sonic's allies form the Resistance to fight back against him. Eventually, they learn that Sonic is alive and they rescue him from the Death Egg with the help of their newest recruit, and Sonic joins the Resistance. After a lot of struggle, the Resistance takes down Eggman in an epic final battle against his Phantom Ruby-powered Death Egg robot, and the world begins to heal. Luckily, despite the massive cast of this game, we only have 2 new characters to introduce. First of which is Infinite, who is the driving force of evil in this game, other than Eggman. Before the events of Sonic Forces, Infinite was the captain of a mercenary group called the Jackal Squad, where he met Eggman. In a fight between the two, Infinite hit the Phantom Ruby, and it showed Eggman and himself the destruction that Infinite craved deep in his heart. Eggman liked what he saw and made Infinite the leader of the Eggman army, as well as his right-hand man. From here, Infinite had a run-in with Shadow the Hedgehog, who made quick work of the Jackal Squad. Infinite later tried to get revenge on Shadow, who beat him up, ruthlessly insulted him, and then left. This encounter sent Infinite into a nervous breakdown, and he put on the mask that he wears in Sonic Forces for the first time. Eggman gave Infinite the power of the Phantom Ruby replica. The strength that Infinite received was seemingly limitless, or infinite, and he and Eggman came up with a plan to take down Sonic and take over the world. During Sonic's disappearance, Infinite took down a resistance group and let the sole survivor, the Avatar, get away, which would allow the Avatar to join the resistance and ultimately lead to Infinite's downfall. At one point, he would travel to Mystic Jungle to get rid of the Phantom Ruby prototypes. He wound up fighting Silver and accidentally leaving a prototype behind, which would be picked up by the Avatar shortly afterwards. Towards the end of the game, Infinite tried to carry out Eggman's final plan and use the Phantom Ruby to generate a sun that would smash into the city and destroy everyone and everything. But unfortunately for him, the Avatar defused the evil with their own Phantom Ruby prototype. Sonic and the Avatar would then get into one final battle with Infinite and defeat him before dealing with Eggman's giant robot, and poor little Infinite was ultimately absorbed by the power of the true Phantom Ruby inside of the Death Egg robot. Obviously, Infinite was incredibly powerful in the end. Before being given the powers of the Phantom Ruby, he was a famous mercenary that fought with a sword, but obviously he wasn't getting strong enough to beat Shadow, although not many are. With the Ruby, though, he gained near godlike levels of strength and was capable of wiping out many members of the Resistance. His powers included generating illusions, manipulating virtual reality, he could fly, create devastating energy beams, he could mess with gravity, teleport, manifest monsters, and of course, created a second sun. He could also use the Ruby to make cubes that could send people to virtual reality, and could create phantom copies of powerful beings like Chaos, Metal Sonic, Shadow, and Zavik. Basically, as long as nobody had another Phantom Ruby, he was invincible. But of course, someone did. Like I mentioned earlier, the Resistance welcomed a new recruit in the Avatar. In a lot of their first fights, the Avatar either ran away or hid, as they were immobilized by fear, but in time they proved to be a really valuable ally to the cause. They eventually found their stride after the mission to rescue Sonic, thanks to fighting along the Hedgehog. Eventually, the Avatar goes to Mystic Jungle, as I mentioned, where they find the Phantom Ruby prototype. The Avatar then went on to help out with Operation Big Wave, where they face off against Infinite, and can actually hold their own for a bit with the help of the Ruby, but ultimately Infinite left without finishing the fight, allowing the Avatar to live even longer. When Sonic gets pulled into null space later in the game, the Avatar risked their life to save him and wound up getting pulled into the black hole with Sonic. They escaped together and hopped right back into the fight, no longer the scaredy cat that they were in the beginning. In the end, the Avatar was able to use the Phantom Ruby prototype to destroy the looming sun that Infinite created to wipe everyone out. This gave the rest of the Resistance enough of a chance to fight back and win the war to take back the planet. Afterwards, the Avatar parts from the Resistance and goes off on their own to do God knows what. Now, the Avatar's skill set depends on the animal that the player picks during customization. When the bear uses a wire attack, enemies get blown away. Using the bird gives the Avatar some extra airtime with double jumps. The rabbit gives you a bit longer invincibility buffer after taking a hit, the cat keeps some rings after getting hit, and the dog respawns with rings already. Finally, the wolf collects rings like a magnet, and the hedgehog gives you a bit more time to pick up any rings that get dropped. On the battlefield, the Avatar uses grappling gear and wires to get around, to reach things, or to even tie up bad guys. They also use Wispons to grant themselves color powers. They are quick, agile, and most of all, at least in the end, they are courageous. The next set of characters that we have to talk about come from Sonic Boom, which spans several games, comics, and a TV show, all in its own universe, which took place between 2014 and 2017. In the most simple way to put it, without summarizing all of these different mediums, it just follows Sonic and his friends fighting the various evils of Dr. Eggman. The characters we're going to be focusing on in this are Styx the Badger, Lyric, and Defect. And we're going to start with Defect. Ragnabot is a robot created by Dr. Eggman. He was meant to extract Ragnium from Eggman's Eggbot racers, but couldn't get it right because of his faulty magnets, and so the Doctor renamed him into Defect in light of his shortcomings. Later, Defect learned that he could magnetize to other things, and decided to defeat Sonic to gain Eggman's praise. However, Team Sonic can't really be kept down for very long, and Eggman would only keep ragging on him despite any of his successes. Defect eventually went on to Seaside Island, where he met Styx the Badger, who immediately took a liking to the cute little robot. They parted ways for a short time, but during a final showdown on Ragnarok, Defect accidentally destroyed the Ragnium mine, putting everyone's lives in danger. Sonic and Styx saved Eggman, and the Doctor gives Defect to Styx as a thank you for saving his life. Tails reprogrammed the evil out of him, and Styx takes Defect home. And in Season 2, Defect became the guardian of the Cubots. Defect was built with powerful eco-magnets that were meant to extract Ragnium, but instead he wound up being able to magnetize to everything except Ragnium, much to Eggman's disappointment. He is strong enough to tear apart robots and rip trees out of the ground. He's capable of building himself totems, monsters, and stone dragons. All in all, he is surprisingly useful despite his name. As I mentioned, one of his only friends was Styx the Badger, the sole descendant of Jebediah Badger. Styx grew up pretty much alone in the wilderness, out in the sticks, and her first friends were basically Team Sonic, who got her out of her burrow, and Styx ended up joining them to defend people from Eggman's many attacks. Like, many attacks. I don't have the time to go through each and every one, but Sonic Boom is a pretty fun show, so feel free to give it a watch if you're curious about seeing Styx in action. In fights, she is very animalistic, no doubt due to her time in the wilderness. She has a wicked nose that can sniff out her targets. She can survive no problem in the wilds with skills like fire starting, navigation, mushroom identification, swimming, hunting, and weapon and net making. She is an excellent archer and uses a boomerang as her primary weapon, but she's also skilled with many other weapons, including slingshots, nunchucks, nets, clubs, maces, bow staffs, and her Enerbeam. With that, we can move on to the games, where the big bad is Lyric. Lyric is the final surviving ancient. His thirst for power made him betray his fellow ancients, using their chaos crystals to bring about a new robotic world. I'm not going to get into the Ancients right now because I'll be talking about them a little bit later in this video, so don't worry about them just yet. Lyric built a mechanical army of destruction troops and sentinels to carry out his plan to destroy all life on Earth and replace it with robots that he ruled over. Before he got too far though, Sonic arrived from the future, allowing the rest of the Ancients to put Lyric in a tomb where he would stay for a very long time. His troops remained waiting for someone or anyone to discover them and their secret, which ended up being Eggman because, obviously. 1,000 years later and Sonic releases Lyric, but this Sonic hasn't met him yet. Lyric ends up in cahoots with Robotnik, who studied and understood the Ancients' robot troops, and the two work together to get the crystals until Lyric gets fed up with Eggman's incompetence. Eggman then tried to use Metal Sonic to get back at Lyric, but Lyric just took over Metal Sonic and got him to search for the crystals instead. One final battle and a destroyed control device later, and Lyric is no longer a threat though. As for his abilities, Lyric's cyborgness grants him a lot of strengths and powers. His robotic enhancements are like a living life support, and let him survive a very long time, and he also has the ability to control any electronic devices nearby, but this power gets taken away from him when Sonic and the gang get rid of his control device. Outside of that, Lyric can shoot his detachable fists at enemies and shoots lasers and blasts from his hands. He can bring down pillars from the sky, shoot off explosive energy, and can even levitate. On top of all of that, he's obviously a genius. His skills with robotics and engineering is probably on par if not better than Tails, and his troops gave even Robotnik a tough time to figure out. With that though, we can move back to the main universe, sort of. Starting in 2018, we have the IDW Comics, which are like an alternate timeline to the games that diverge from the end of Sonic Forces. That said, they give us a lot of new characters, which only makes sense as it's been running on a monthly updated schedule for the last almost decade. And I can't go through every single one, but I'll go through the more important ones here. That said, the comic series is really fun and charming, and if you're interested in me going through the whole series, let us know in the comments down below. Until then though, I definitely recommend checking out the IDW Comics for yourselves, as you'll probably have a really good time. For now though, the first new characters that we meet by name are Rought and Tumble, so let's start there. During the war to take back the planet, Rought and Tumble would make their way to Barricade Town, where they seemingly helped defend the people there against the Badniks, and later promised to help the people of Barricade Town set up their defenses. Instead, Rought and Tumble took control of the town, as well as its Wispawn distribution center, hoarding the Wisp for themselves and ruling in tyranny. Sonic and Knuckles eventually show up and liberate the town, sending Rought and Tumble to jail. Later, Dr. Starline breaks them out, and they would help capture an amnesiac Eggman, where he regains his memories after seeing a busted-up Metal Sonic in the aftermath of the Neo Metal Sonic incident. Eggman then hires Rought and Tumble on as henchmen and promises to make them some cool new weapons to deal with Sonic. Rought was given the Vapor Condenser, while Tumble got a prosthetic tail to make up for his missing one. Starline eventually gives the brothers core gear as well, allowing them to use power cores to enhance their already powerful skills. Rought and Tumble also get to drive some pretty huge drill tanks, but they end up getting smashed by Amy's Pico Pico hammer. From there, they go on to work with a handful of villains along the way and participate in a lot of schemes, but let's just get to their powers. Rought is fast and agile, while his brother is much bulkier and stronger. And together, the brothers are scary enough to keep Barricade Town under their control. The Skunk Brothers are obviously a stinky force to be reckoned with, and they can easily take down Badniks, and of course as skunks, they can create smokescreens or use stink bomber attacks to stun their enemies or blur their vision. There's also the Grand Stink Bomber Slam, where Tumble throws Rought as Rought uses the Stink Bomber for a bit of extra range. Their higher up, Dr. Starline, idolizes Robotnik's work, and found Eggman after the war to take back the planet. They became allies once Eggman had his memories back, and they worked together until the Metal Virus incident, after which Starline was fired. He wasn't done with the world domination plans though, and would go on to recruit some bad guys to work with him on his own conquest for world domination. Later, in the final battle against Eggman, Starline was crushed to death though. Starline was a genius. His adoration for Eggman's work nurtured a very incredible gift for science and engineering in him, and it's a shame he used it for evil. His most notable works were probably the research on the Warp Topaz, which allowed him to use the topazes as essentially a black hole portal combo. There's also the development of the Tri-Core, which is the result of 3 combined power cores capable of speed, strength, and agility enhancements. Or in sacrificing the device, you could power up all 3 at once to use a single Tri-Core blast and have the power to take down a very powerful enemy. Starline was also responsible for the creation of Surge the Tenric and Kitsunami the Fennec, but more on them in a minute. He was also capable of hypnotism, memory altering, subliminal messaging, and his multi-tool heel spurs could electrocute or poison enemies with a single kick. On to Tangle the Lemur, who is a spunky, hyperactive adrenaline junkie who got a taste for the wildlife when she fought along Sonic in the Neo Metal Sonic incident. But that's not to say that Tangle has never adventured around before, and whenever she did, she would make sure to bring back something cool for her childhood friend, Jewel the Beetle, to put up in their museum. Tangle also became very close friends with Whisper the Wolf, and together they handled a lot of loose ends of Whisper's past and go on many adventures as well. As for Tangle's own abilities, they mostly lie in her tail. She can use it to whip, bash, bungee, slingshot, tie things up, and even bounce around. As I mentioned, her best friend is Jewel the Beetle, who's a curator for the Mineral Museum, and she's always looking out for Tangled, who just can't seem to stay out of trouble. Jewel doesn't like fighting and is quite timid, but she does end up becoming the director of the restoration in Amy's place. As for Whisper the Wolf, they were a member of the Diamond Cutters, a mercenary group against Dr. Robotnik. The Diamond Cutters were made up of Slinger the Ocelot, Clairvoyance, Smithy the Lion, and most importantly, Mimic the Octopus, who would be responsible for the deaths of Slinger, Claire, and Smithy. After this, the once bubbly, upbeat Whisper became a shadow of herself, who was unable to even speak higher than a whisper, and horrified of making friends ever again. That is, until she met Tangle, who began to help break down those walls. Together they took down Mimic, and Whisper was able to move past the trauma that had been holding her back, and they reformed the Diamond Cutters with Lanolin the Sheep as their leader. Before Tangle, though, Whisper took part in the war doing stealthy solo work to the point where she was given the nickname the Guardian Angel of the Battlefield. She wears a concealer made for her by Smithy that acts as a body cam and a Wisp translator. Whisper uses another weapon made by Smithy, the variable Wispon. This device lets her fire with precision and use multiple Wisp powers in a fight. The weapon switches between laser mode, hover mode, rocket mode, spike mode, and cube mode, the last one turning into a big hammer rather than a gun like the others. She can also use the variable Wispon in combination with her prisms to create chaotic trajectories for any shots she fires. On to Mimic the Octopus, who was an actor once. Despite making it big, he started shapeshifting, namely into his competition. When the war to take back the planet began, Mimics shapeshift into an egg pond to blend in and survive. One day, a much cheerier Whisper than we are used to had witnessed these shapeshifting abilities and recruited Mimic into the Diamond Cutters as their infiltrator. And here he was given a Blue Wisp companion and a Cube Wispon to use with it. Mimic would stay with the Diamond Cutters until the start of the war when he was captured by Eggman, who told him that he would spare him if he handed over his fellow mercenaries, and led the Diamond Cutters, with the exception of Whisper, to their deaths at the hand of shadow androids. Of course, Eggman wanted Whisper dead as well, though, and sent Mimic back out to finish the job when he learned that he lied and that she was still out there alive somewhere. In the end, Whisper and Tangle captured Mimic and brought him to Tails, who detained him until the military could come and get him. He would continue on plotting and scheming, trying to get revenge against Whisper and Tangled, and escaped Eggman's wrath until eventually, in his final battle with Whisper, he tried to kill them both by blowing up his power core, but he was the only one that ended up dead. As for his weapons, Mimic uses knives and laser guns, with few exceptions. On to the current generation of Diamond Cutters, though, and they are led by Lanolin the Sheep. Now, a lot of people don't like Lanolin, but I'm here to say she's fine. She's flawed, but who isn't? Yes, she was fooled by Mimic. Yes, she's a little bit bossy, but she obviously wouldn't have brought the disguised octopus onto her team if she knew that he was evil. She was just doing what she thought was right, and to her, it probably looked like Silver and Whisper were picking on the new guy. Should she have heard her friends out? Yep. Did she have to kick Silver out of the Diamond Cutters over it? Probably not. But Lanolin knows what it's like to feel weak and helpless, and she didn't want her new recruit to feel like that. Like I said, overall, it's a mixed bag, but she's fine. Lanolin started out as a helpless victim of the war to take back the planet. She hated that powerless feeling and was inspired by Sonic and his friends to join the restoration to do her part and help others not feel the way she did. But Lanolin wants to be proactive and not reactive, and she suggests re-establishing the Diamond Cutters as a rapid response team that handles threats before they spiral out of control. She is a great fighter, and her weapon is the golden bell Wispon around her neck. She uses it with her Wisp Maggie, and it lets her raise the battlefield with sound waves and doubles as a loudspeaker. From there, we can look at a couple of Dr. Starline's creations with Surge the Tenric and Kitsunami the Fennec. These were created under the Operation Remaster project and are cyber-enhanced beings constructed from biodata from Sonic, Tails, and Shadow with no memory of who they were before Starline got his hands on them. Both Surge and Kitsunami underwent countless horrifying tests and bouts of hypnosis that left them both severely traumatized. I don't have time to go too far into their story here, but we can talk about what they can do. Kit is a skilled hydrokinesis user and makes hydrocoil tails that can hold robots in place. She can swing around a heavy metal mace, pry open heavy metal doors, and can even turn water into icicles. He uses his hydro backpack to give him a steady water supply, and that makes him useful in most situations. Surge, on the other hand, is fast enough to make a sonic boom and can keep up with Sonic with electromagnetic propulsion. She can generate lightning bolts and electrical surges powerful enough to set a forest on fire, and her overcharge attacks bring down multiple lightning strikes to hit many opponents at once. She uses the Dynamo Cage to absorb energy from wisps and chaos drives, and her electromagnetic expertise lets her use magnetic force to make things levitate, and she also has the ability to travel as a bolt of lightning. And our final character from the IDW Comics is Belle the Tinkerer, a wooden badnik created by Eggman back when he had amnesia during the Neo Metal Sonic incident. She was supposed to be Mr. Tinker's assistant, but Eggman's stay in Windmill Village was pretty short-lived. Because she was unaffected by the metal virus later, the people of Windmill Village assumed that she was Eggman's spy, and when they began throwing out all of Mr. Tinker's things after the virus had been cured, Belle decided to look for Eggman to see if he was really, truly evil. Unfortunately, Eggman was in fact really, truly evil, and as Belle comes to terms with this, she joins the Restoration, where she begins working in the machine shop. Belle had gone through a lot since then, and in the end, she leaves the Restoration on her repaired Motobug called Motobud to have her own adventures. Belle is a phenomenal mechanic, and her father, Eggman, passed on his love for tinkering and built her to be the best engineer that she could be. She has different tools under her fingertips, which fulfill all of her tinkering needs, and she can jump really high if her tail is pulled. She is a genius when it comes to robotic repairs and can read Eggman's blueprints like they're not even ciphered. On top of that, she has access to his EggNet servers and files as well. But that's all I've got for the IDW Comics. So let's take a look at Sonic Racing from 2019, where we meet Dodon Pa. In Team Sonic Racing, Dodon Pa invites Sonic and the gang to take part in his ultimate test of racing skill, where the winners get amazing prizes. Everyone is immediately pretty suspicious of Dodon Pa and thinks that Eggman is somehow behind this Grand Prix, but in reality, King Dodon Pa is from the Don Pa Kingdom and is the president of Don Pa Motors. They recently had a breakthrough discovery on their Ultimate Energy engine, and he is hosting this Grand Prix to test their findings on a large scale. The engine runs on teamwork, so Dodon Pa orchestrates a tournament that would foster and encourage teamwork for the best results. He is a very generous, smart, and talented scientist with the ability to send things through time pretty casually, which allowed Silver to join the race as well. And he has incredible technological resources at his fingertips. At the end of the day, he's just kind of a good guy. So, with that out of the way, we can move on to 2020 with Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie, which, like Sonic Boom, takes place in its own continuity. In the film, we meet Longlaw the Giant Owl, Tom, and Maddie, as well as Agent Stone. Longlaw was the guardian of Sonic in his childhood and sent him to Earth to protect him from the tribe of angry echidnas that was after him. Unfortunately, Longlaw died in the process, and the Giant Owl race died with her, but not before leaving a holographic recording behind for Sonic, telling him to guard the Master Emerald from the echidnas. Tom and Maddie are a married couple that wind up taking Sonic in. Tom is the sheriff of Green Hills, Montana, and his wife Maddie is a veterinarian, which I'm sure comes in handy when your adopted son is also a hedgehog. They are obviously both good in a crisis thanks to their jobs, and Tom's police training comes in handy when it comes time to face off against Robotnik. Finally, we have Agent Stone, who is Robotnik's assistant in the movies, and he never hesitates to team up with the Doctor on any of his schemes. He is manipulative, good with Robotnik's advanced tech, and most importantly, he can make a mean latte. At least according to Robotnik. Luckily, the movies don't add too many more characters, so we can head on to 2022's Sonic Frontiers and back into some gameplay. Eggman goes to Starfall Island to get his hands on the Ancient's technology. He creates Sage, the AI, to protect him in his current work and to get into the island's network, but in the process, Eggman accidentally gets pulled into cyberspace. Sonic, Tails, and Amy end up on Starfall Island looking for the emeralds, and Sonic winds up in cyberspace as well, where he is told to find the emeralds and beat the Titans to tear down the dimensional barriers. Eggman and Sage try to find a way to release the Doctor from cyberspace while keeping an eye on Sonic. Meanwhile, Sonic runs through the Titans and catches back up with his friends interdimensionally. In this game, Sonic gains cyber corruption powers, and while most of the symptoms of this aren't good, at least you get to use the Grand Slam, Cyclone Kick, and Cross Slash. Plus, Sonic uses this power to turn into both the perfect parrying Super Sonic 2 and Super Sonic Cyber. Now, the first new character we gotta talk about here is Sage, who, as I mentioned, is a humanoid artificial intelligence created by Eggman to protect him and help him get his hands on the Ancient's technology. Sage downloads herself onto the Egg device, which was hooked up to an ancient portal to cyberspace, and the access to the technology rewrote a lot of her code, making her a lot more powerful and gave her a much more human personality. This made her aware of the end, and she knew that the only way that Eggman could survive that evil was to contain him in cyberspace. Sage longs for a family and hopes that Eggman would treat her like a daughter, and she becomes excited at the possibility of meeting her brothers Orbot and Cubot. She even gets teary-eyed seeing Sonic's found family, and eventually Sage and Sonic would travel to space to defeat the End, and she sacrifices herself to take it down. But don't worry, after all this, Eggman manages to bring his precious daughter back to life. More than his grandfather could say about Maria. Sage's physical body isn't physical at all though, and she can phase through matter like a ghost. She can also shoot laser beams and manipulate machinery, which is just pretty badass. Then we have the End. In the past, the End destroyed many civilizations and planets. One of those planets was the original home of the Ancients, and the population fled to Earth as a result. The End followed them to their new home, but the Ancients fought back with their Titans, and the End was tied to one of those Titans and trapped in cyberspace where no one would find it, except someone ended up doing that. When they were released, Sonic and Sage fought against the End, and Sage sacrifices herself so that the End would die with her, but in the alternate ending, Sonic went cyber and took down the End without the added AI casualty. The End is an absolutely terrifying threat. I mean, it basically travels around the galaxy destroying planets like Galactus. It could probably even destroy entire dimensions, so it's a good thing that it was stopped before it could achieve whatever its true form was, because that sounds like the nightmare to end all nightmares. As for their abilities, they can regenerate extremely quickly and raise land so viciously that it takes thousands of years to begin to recover. It can also read minds, shoot lasers, and communicate telepathically. The End was also capable of self-destructing and causing a world-ending explosion, but as I mentioned, Sage's sacrifice stops this explosion before it can happen. Now, I've mentioned the Ancients several times in this video, and this is where we finally get to flesh them out. They were one of the 4 great civilizations and the original guardians of the Chaos Emeralds. They wound up escaping to Earth because of the pull of the Master Emerald, and the Ancients officially set up shop on Starfall Island. This island quickly became a technological hub as the Ancients used the Chaos Emeralds to begin to rebuild their lives, before the End managed to find its way over and wiped out many of the Ancients until they sealed it in cyberspace. From there, the Ancients would branch off into 2 types of beings. Their bodies would evolve into Chao and Chaos, and their spirits would manifest into the forms of the Coco, little stone-like creatures that we now see living on Starfall Island. But with that, we have reached our final installment that we'll be covering today, which is 2024's Sonic Prime, where Sonic and Eggman face off and shatter the universe in the process, resulting in Sonic dimension hopping to try and save the Shatterverse. Starting with the big bads, the Chaos Council is made up of Dr. Babbles, Dr. Deep, Dr. Don't, Dr. Dunnit, and they're led, of course, by Mr. Dr. Eggman, and they are the acting dictators of New York City. These alternate universe Eggmen have divided the city into districts ruled by each member of the council. Mr. Dr. Eggman fights in a crimson-red mech suit with jet boosters, extending limbs, and laser cannons. Dr. Babbles is a baby, but he can still pilot his own mech and fight Sonic, though his mech is an egg-shaped baby toy that has a baby rattle mace and a laser Gatling gun from what we've been able to see. Dr. Deep is a philosophical robot designer with a suit of samurai-inspired armor, equipped with swords, buzzsaw, and shuriken. Dr. Don't is the emo teen Eggman with programming skills on par with Tails. He uses a game controller to pilot Egg Forcers with jetpacks and guns, and Dr. Dunnit is the elderly Eggman, who is a great pilot with a laser-shooting cane. In Season 2, Mr. Dr. Eggman would get the idea to create Chaos Sonic using the energy of the Paradox Prism shards, and that's who we're going to talk about next. So Chaos Sonic is one of 2 new Robo-Sonics from Sonic Prime. They are ultimately destroyed by a Prism Shard energy blast sent by 9, but that doesn't mean this arrogant robot was anything to scoff at. He could run as fast as Sonic, keep up in a fight against Knuckles, and got hit by a bus and managed to brush it off like it was nothing. However, he was followed by 9's Alpha Grim Sonic, who could basically do all the same stuff as Chaos Sonic, but he looked scarier and couldn't talk like Chaos Sonic could. But Sonic wasn't the only one seeing more of himself in Sonic Prime, though, and Amy, Knuckles, and Rouge all got a few doppelgangers as well. Rusty Rose is an alternate Amy who was part cyborg and was part of the Chaos Council until she met the other Amy, Black Rose Amy. Black Rose is the captain of the Kraken's crew and convinces Rusty that she doesn't need to be evil, ultimately leading her to joining the crew as well. Rusty's powers mostly revolve around using her cybernetic enhancements to fight, while Black Rose uses swords, cannons, and her fists. And the third new Amy, Thorn Rose Amy, uses her hammer to fend off a group called the Scavengers who threaten to drain the jungle of all of its resources. I don't know if you can tell, but Sonic Prime is a lot. Knuckles' counterparts include Knuckles the Dread, who formed a crew with Black Rose Amy after he failed to obtain the Devil's Lighthouse, and lost his main ship, prompting his crew to leave him afterwards. Gnarly Knuckles fought Thorn Rose Amy about the way that they should be using the jungle's resources, and Renegade Knuckles formed the resistance to New York City with Renegade Rouge. Speaking of which, Rouge has Baton Rouge of the Kraken crew, Prim Rouge, the leader of the Scavengers, and more importantly, Rebel Rouge, who rescued Renegade Knuckles from their old home in Green Hill. The 2 of them, as we just mentioned, went on to form the resistance against the Chaos Council in New York City. And speaking of alternate reality friends, though, Sonic Prime brings us 9, a dead ringer for Tails. This Miles Prower never had Sonic to heal his heart, and instead manufactured 7 robotic prosthetic tails to keep him company, and to keep his enemies away. And while 9 and our universe's Sonic get off to a rocky they do eventually figure it out and become friends before too long. 9 also created the Shattercraft to get around the Shatterverse, and after being imprisoned by the Chaos Council, goes on to help Sonic defeat Chaos Sonic. Sonic and 9 would have a bit of a falling out, and 9 would return to his lab and take a page from the Chaos Council's book, using the power of the Prism Shards to create Alpha Grim Sonic, among a few others. Alpha Grim would eventually be taken down by Shadow at the end of a very long battle against 9, after which 9 and Sonic make up. 9 uses Sonic's Prism energy to fix the Paradox Prism, and ultimately they restore the Shatter Spaces. 9 makes Tails look like a casual mechanic. His hacking and scientific ability are enough to mess with the Chaos Council, and his mechanical tails allow him to move around like a spider and defend himself. Add in the power of the Paradox Prism to that, and Tails that can use energy blasts, create robotic clones of people, open portals, and alter reality within the Shatter Spaces, and yeah, this guy is a real threat that's very difficult to deal with, so it's a good thing that Sonic managed to help him get his head on straight. But with that, Sonic Prime is officially out of the way, and that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and do all that good stuff so you can keep up to date with the channel and watch more fun stuff like this. If you're looking for similar things to watch, we have a video on all of Ben 10's original forms, as well as every animatronic in the FNAF series. But let me know which other videos you'd like us to make in the comments down below. You can also tell us your favorite Sonic character, or if I missed any of them, because it's a long series and there's a lot to go over. Either way, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.